Chapter 1361. It was not a secret that the three universal civilizations had resisted the first wave of foreign invasion in the intercepting circle. They had already let the Galactic Society know when they mobilized the various armies and armed forces. Because this battle was not broadcasted live, no information was sent back. After many days of fermentation, countless galactic residents heading to the central area of the explored universe were on tenterhooks, afraid that they would wake up the next day and see the news of the three universal civilizations' defeat. In the atmosphere of the entire Galactic Society, the Foreign Affairs Department of the three universal civilizations, which had been silent for many days, finally broadcasted the results of the frontline battle to the Galactic Society, announcing this great victory. The three universal civilizations claimed that the attacks of the foreign enemies had been repelled and released a more detailed battle report, publicizing the loss ratio of many troops. The most eye-catching of all was the results of the high-level combatants. With just 6 people as the price, they had killed more than 100 beyond grade S. This battle record made countless people's eyes light up. Although the three universal civilizations had won the battle, they had also lost billions of fleets. Even so, it was still a praiseworthy victory. The loss was far lower than the enemies, but the loss ratio at the beyond grade A level was several times better. They were the troops with the lowest loss ratio, outshining the rest, successfully wiping out the expeditionary army. This great victory greatly boosted the people's morale. Most of the galactic residents who had been frightened heaved a sigh of relief. The panic and fear in their hearts gradually faded, and they were filled with excitement and joy. The public opinion that was originally filled with all kinds of worry and panic changed unanimously, turning into a trend of praising the three universal civilizations. It was as if there were loyal supporters everywhere overnight. The amazing battle record of the Beyond Grade, as was naturally a hot topic of discussion among ordinary people, and they were almost unanimously praised. Many galactic residents praised their own individual strength for being quite reliable, as if they had forgotten the hate speech they had made against the association in the past. The association seemed to have gone from an opposing class that abused its privileges as it pleased to trustworthy guardian of the Galactic Society, and its image underwent a 180-degree change. During the internal conflicts, many galactic residents did not like the Beyond Grade, as in never stopped picking on them. However, when facing a great victory of the foreign enemies, the galactic residents felt proud of the excellence of their high-level combatants. The long-accumulated resentment and hatred seemed to have been selectively forgotten, and their attitude changed very smoothly. Of course, there were also groups of people with deep-rooted resentment. However, at present, they were all cowering and did not dare to voice their usual opinions. They shrunk their necks and quietly accepted the protection with a clear conscience. Now that the enemy had not retreated, they did not dare to put down their chopsticks and curse. However, for most of the galactic residents, when danger came, they would cheer for whoever protected them from invasion. The unity of the outside world temporarily suppressed the internal class conflicts. A great victory, Dylan disagreed. The huge virtual screen played the news report of the three universal civilizations. The room was filled with revivers who had joined the association with different expressions. Due to the previous differences, many revivers did not respond to the call and did not participate in this battle. They all stayed in the explored universe and did not know how intense the battle at the front lines was. They could only watch the battle reports through the news. 6 people sacrificed in exchange for hundreds of casualties. Normally, this would not happen. It seems like Aurora's ability has already reduced the battle losses to a very, very low level. Biger nodded. No matter how low the battle losses are, the 6 people who died in the battle are still dead. There are also association members among them. They lost their lives because they believed Black Star's nonsense. Serves them right. Dylan curled his lips. Everyone shook their heads, speechless. How could there be no deaths in a war of such intensity? The sacrifice of Beyond Grade, as was inevitable, but emotionally speaking, everyone still felt that it was a pity. Don't say that. They sacrificed themselves to fight against foreign enemies. Furthermore, with Black Star's Sanctum Revival, they can still be reborn. Viger sighed. So what if it's the Sanctum Revival? There's only one chance. They foolishly wasted it. When they come back to life, they'll think the same as us sooner or later, Dylan said with contempt. Viger could not refute. He shook his head helplessly and said, "Don't we still have the underworld as our final guarantee? TSK, do you like losing your freedom? I even suspect that Black Star urged us to participate in the war. Another goal is for us to die in battle and enter the underworld, indirectly enriching his forces." What a bad guy. Dylan clicked his tongue. Black Star shouldn't be such a person. Viger shook his head. Are you very close to him? Can you guarantee what he's thinking? Dylan said impatiently. Whose side are you on? If you like to speak up for Black Star so much, why don't you scram behind his butt? Why don't you obediently receive whatever sh*t he throws at you? What are you talking about? Plus, Black Star doesn't need to sh*t. Viger's mouth twitched, but he was not angry. He was already used to Dylan's foul mouth. Dylan retracted his gaze and snorted. This is only the first wave of attacks. The enemy will invade again, and more beyond grade as we'll die in battle. If we participate in the battle, we'll end up like this sooner or later. It wasn't easy for us to get new life. I'm not willing to work for the 3 universal civilizations. Have you made up your mind to watch the enemy invade? Viger frowned. I'm not going to get involved in this mess. If the 3 universal civilizations win, I'll stay. If they don't win, where can I go in the universe? My elven holy kingdom is gone, and my concubines have been divided up. What's there for me to miss? Dylan scratched his nose. Fine. You're good. Viger was speechless. He shook his head and walked out of the room. After hesitating for a moment, he took out his communicator and dialed Oathkeeper's number. A few seconds later, the call went through, and Oathkeeper's face appeared on the screen. What's the matter? Viger hesitated for a moment before saying, regarding Black Star's call, I want to ask for your opinion. He was actually a little confused. After all, Dylan was not completely unreasonable. To the revivers, it was not a bad choice to stay out of trouble. However, Viger still could not make up his mind, so he wanted to ask for Oathkeeper's opinion. Oathkeeper's persistence over the years had earned the respect of all the revivers. After all, he was once a comrade with the same goal and an old friend of many years. He was very important in his heart and was far more trustworthy than Black Star. Oathkeeper also knew that the revivers did not respond to Han Zhao's call, so he understood what Viger was asking. He pondered for a moment and said, I suggest you participate in the battle and give it your all. Seeing that Viger did not speak, Oathkeeper continued, I know you're worried about the risks, but Black Star has his own plan and doesn't treat you guys as sacrifices. The underworld isn't all his trump cards. He's prepared other escape routes for you guys. Furthermore, you guys have a misconception. The compromise of the 3 universal civilizations doesn't mean that the battle between the beyond grade as is over. Black Star is still working hard for this goal. The enemy is an opportunity. I don't really understand. Viger frowned. It's not convenient for me to explain this matter too clearly for the time being. If you're willing to believe me, I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't be afraid of death. Black Bear will always have a way to make you open your eyes again. Oathkeeper shook his head. Without Black Star's approval, it was not convenient for him to reveal the truth of the unlimited Sanctum Revival. Furthermore, it would be suspicious if he said it. Facts spoke louder than words. Oathkeeper had heard Han Zhao talk about the plan and knew that Black Star needed a reviver who dared to die in battle as an example. If none of the revivers participated in the battle, Black Star would lack the material to show the truth of the Sanctum Revival. However, it was not appropriate to directly ask the revivers to die. After all, even with the Sanctum Revival, their strength would decrease after they were reborn. Not many people were willing to do so. People's hearts were always fickle, so he could only urge them to participate in the battle. Anyway, as long as they went to the front lines, Oathkeeper believed that Black Star would definitely be able to act as the revivers. I'll think about it. Viger hung up the communication and thought about Oathkeeper's hint. He pondered for a while before making up his mind. There must be a reason for Oathkeeper's suggestion. It was better to go to the front lines to take a look. Even if he participated in the battle, Aurora would be on the battlefield, so the danger should not be that high. In the large conference room of the Intercepting Circle's main base, many beyond grade, as who participated in the battle, gathered together. On the conference stage sat Simon and the other commanders, as well as the remote projections of the leaders of the three universal civilizations. After many days of fighting, this batch of World Tree Expedition team had already been defeated. The three universal civilizations only had to clean up the mess, and the three leaders descended to reward these beyond grade as. The direct beyond grade as had other internal rewards, but the rewards for the association members were different. They were basically direct material rewards. This was an agreement that Han Shao and the three universal civilizations had agreed on long ago. The association would not provide high-level combatants for free. Everyone's contributions have been recorded. According to the agreement that His Excellency Black Star has negotiated with us, we will pay you enough. These are the list of resources. Bruce summoned the virtual screen and opened a list interface. All kinds of items that could be exchanged were displayed to everyone present. Han Shao took a look and nodded slightly. Many of the items here were strategic resources that were not open to the public under normal circumstances. This time, all of them were open to exchange and did not hide anything. This was basically the same as the players using their faction contribution points to exchange for equipment. But the difference was that the Beyond grade as did not have an interface to display their contribution points. This time, Lewis pondered for a moment and said, "In order to show our sincerity, you can choose different universal treasures in our inventory as rewards according to your contributions. It will be the same in the future." Hearing this, the eyes of many beyond grade as lit up with joy. Many of them did not even have a single universal treasure, but now that they had a channel to exchange for it, they were pleasantly surprised. Even those who had universal treasures did not mind having more equipment in their hands. "Yo, you've put in a lot of effort." Han Shao raised his brows. At the very least, every beyond grade A participating in the battle would have one, which was not a small number. Furthermore, they would be provided with a right to exchange for it every time they fought in the future. Even if the three universal civilizations had a lot of universal treasures in their inventory, they could not afford to be so extravagant. After all, the beyond grade could choose on their own, so they would definitely choose from the good ones. However, on second thought, Han Shao understood the three universal civilizations plan. Since they had to distribute universal treasures to the participants in every battle, they might as well give them away. At the same time, it would also encourage the beyond grade as to fight. After all, if the beyond grade as were gone, there was no point in keeping some universal treasures that were exclusive to individuals. In addition, the three universal civilizations might have another plan, which was to use rewards to attract the association's revivers to participate in the battle. Han Shao knew what kind of shit they were holding in. However, there was no need to stop them. Han Shao was also happy to let the three universal civilizations bleed. He could not ask the other beyond grade as who had contributed to the battle to reject this reward. That would be too unpopular. Everyone rubbed their palms and chose the universal treasures they liked from the list. However, there were also a few beyond grade as who made a different choice. They surrounded Aurora and smiled kindly. "We owe you a favor this time. Do you have any universal treasures you want? I can help you choose." Aurora was stunned and waved her hands. "There's no need for that. There's no need to be modest. You deserve it." Mila Zhao's incarnation revealed a loving smile. As a huge living target, be it the enemy's hit rate or his own healer's hit rate, it was very high for him. This time, he was the happiest to be healed by Aurora. "I really don't need anything." Aurora was helpless. This was the truth. With an insane treasure like the underworld and a boss who sold universal treasures in bulk, why would she need anything else? She really did not need the universal treasures of the three universal civilizations. The surrounding beyond grade as looked at her enviously, but they could understand her actions. After all, this battle had already proven that if one wanted to survive on the battlefield, a healer was the most important. Some beyond grade, as were willing to give up the opportunity to exchange for universal treasures to please Aurora. Furthermore, this healer's healing ability was limited. If they did not build a good relationship with her, the amount of healing they received after the battle would probably not be comparable to others. Han Xiao glanced at Aurora, who was surrounded by everyone, and his mouth twitched. Tisk, so this is what it means to have milk is mother. After complaining in his heart, Han Xiao retracted his gaze and casually looked at the list. He did not feel anything. He had a deep foundation now, so he did not care too much about the universal treasures provided by the three universal civilizations. His thoughts had already drifted away. The main storyline mission of this battle had already been completed. Although it was a drop in the bucket for him, the EXP reward this time was very generous. Countless army players had received a large wave of EXP, which was the greatest benefit for him. The sooner the players reached the max level, the sooner they could spend their EXP elsewhere, increasing their EXP gain speed. Han Zhao's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. After repelling the enemy this time, a large number of high-level combatants will need time to revive. With me here, the World Tree probably won't dare to send foreign experts over, so their next wave of attacks won't arrive so soon. Should I take this opportunity to make a trip to the Sanctum? The flow of time in the Sanctum was different from that in the main universe. The last time he entered the third Sanctum, it took him 3 months. Even if his authority in the first Sanctum was higher, it would probably take him a lot of time. Taking advantage of the fact that the World Tree was not invading, it was a good opportunity to enter the Sanctum. There was a high chance that he would not miss anything. Han Xiao planned to enter the Sanctum, this time not only to revive the 6 victims. There were still many beyond grade as waiting to be revived in history, such as the direct descendants of the 3 universal civilizations and the Supercluster Alliance. This was a deal that he had agreed to. When the World Tree revived the high-level combatants, he had to expand the number of experts on his side. It's a pity that the revivers did not participate in this war. Otherwise, I would have been able to reveal the truth of the Sanctum revival. However, it's fine if I don't expose it now. The war is still in its early stages. If I expose it too early, it might cause the 3 universal civilizations to have other thoughts. When the 2 sides can't split their attention, it might be the best time to expose it. Han Xiao had a thought. However, he still had to use Destiny's Child to monitor and confirm that the World Tree would not take any further action in the short term. Only then could he enter the Sanctum with ease. On the other side, in the World Tree Civilization's territory, the Tree King Palace, 4 high-level combatants have been captured alive. The mental network has been disconnected. Although the World Tree connection still exists, we can't monitor their status. The second executive officer was expressionless as he reported the situation of the 4 World Tree experts sealed in amber. Heart Tree King narrowed his eyes and revealed an interested expression. Interesting. Does the enemy this time have such a method to capture them alive? It's not simple. It might be a special item like a space wonder. Can it track their location? Yes, the connection power of the Mother Tree is still being transmitted to the individual, but it's being isolated by something unknown. It can't seep in, so we can't sense the situation of the 4 people. Following the interrupted information state, we can confirm that the coordinates of the 4 people are near the Expeditionary Army battlefield. Let's try to snatch them back next time. Let's see what captured them alive and throw them into the Mother Tree for analysis. Heart Tree King waved his hand. When will the next step begin? The executive officer asked. There's no rush. The other party's recovery type Esper is very troublesome, causing the exchange to be ineffective this time. However, no matter how low the battle results are, it's still an exchange. The enemy has permanently lost a few high-level combatants, so we still have the advantage. Heart Tree King rubbed the armrest and paused for a moment before continuing. Let's wait for our high-level combatants to revive first. Now, let's plan how to get rid of that recovery type Esper. If we don't kill this person, our tactics will be greatly reduced. If the exchange really doesn't work, then let's not waste any more time and directly launch an all-out attack. As long as we enter their territory, the mother tree will be able to eat to its heart's content. Chapter 1362. Not long after, the Beyond Grade has finished choosing their respective rewards, and the leaders of the three universal civilizations gave them some more encouragement before ending the meeting. The group walked out of the room and returned to their exclusive activity room. At this time, Han Xiao clapped twice, attracting everyone's attention. "Everyone, I have something to announce. I might be carrying out the Sanctum Revival soon and bring back the 6 Beyond Grade as who died in battle this time." Everyone was stunned for a moment before becoming excited. So soon, Kasuyi blinked, a little surprised. He was someone who knew the details of the sanctums and knew that it was not easy to open them. He had always thought that Han Xiao would wait until there were more casualties before bringing them back in one go. This was more cost-effective, but now, only 6 had died before using the Sanctum Revival, which was a little beyond his expectations. "It's fine, this is part of the plan." Han Xiao waved his hand. This high-intensity battle had made many Beyond Grade as nervous. Using the Sanctum Revival to bring back the victims could boost their morale. After all, although the revival of Beyond Grade as in history was shocking, it was better to let everyone witness the revival of the dead. At the same time, this was also an opportunity to show their attitude. The impatience to revive the victims could make most people feel relieved and believe that they would receive the same treatment. After all, the other Beyond Grade as did not know the price of the Sanctum Revival. The more relaxed Han Xiao appeared, the more confidence they would have. "I feel that those 6 guys don't want to be revived so quickly. They might die again next time. Why don't we let them sleep for a while?" Sun Hunter muttered softly. Han Xiao turned around and glanced at him, and Sun Hunter immediately shut up. Hearing this, many Beyond Grade as had strange expressions. In everyone's eyes, the Sanctum Revival was only a one-time opportunity. If they could avoid some battles during the period of death, it would be the best for them. However, from the perspective of others, they could not wait for the victims to come back quickly to share the pressure. For a moment, they did not know what to say. There were also some Beyond Grade as who could not help but look at Hela. If not for the fact that Black Star had always been very reliable, they would have thought that Black Star's purpose of reviving the dead was to quickly bring these people who had used the Sanctum Revival to the underworld. Han Xiao saw everyone's expressions and could naturally guess what they were thinking. "Anyway, it's settled. I'm not only reviving the victims this time, but I also plan to revive some historical experts and expand the scale of the high-level combatants to share more pressure. So that's how it is. That's really good." Everyone immediately understood and nodded in agreement. Beep, beep, beep. At this time, Han Xiao's communicator rang. He took it out and saw that it was from Baiger. Han Xiao raised his brows and picked up the call. "Baiger, why are you looking for me?" "Black Star, the revivers and I have decided to join you at the front lines and respond to your call to participate in the war." Baiger went straight to the point with a solemn tone. Why so sudden?" Han Xiao was slightly stunned. The surrounding Beyond Grade has stopped talking and pricked up their ears to listen. Because of their differences, the revivers did not come to participate in the battle and watch them fight the enemy at the front lines. Although no one said anything, they naturally had a lot of opinions about the revivers. Even if they understood the revivers' mentality, they were still dissatisfied. Although Black Star said that he would wait for the revivers to change their minds, in the eyes of everyone, the chances of the revivers responding to the call were too low. Therefore, everyone was very curious about why Baiger suddenly changed his attitude. Could it be that the 3 universal civilizations' rewards attracted them? It shouldn't be. These revivers had seen all kinds of good things before. Furthermore, they had just received their rewards, and the news should not have been sent back yet. Could it be that the great victory and extremely low losses this time gave the revivers confidence? Ahem, I've been thinking about it recently. Since we're all Beyond Grade, as on the United Front, we still need to advance and retreat together. We can't just watch you guys fight for your lives. Plus, Black Star, you're right. We were all born in this galaxy, and it's not time to abandon our home yet. I've decided to do my part. Han Xiao was skeptical. These words sounded righteous, but he did not believe them. He did not feel that these old people would suddenly become hot-blooded. Could it be that Oathkeeper gave him a hint? Han Xiaoxin put on a gratified expression and said with a smile, "You've made the right choice. As I said, no matter when you change your mind, you're welcome to fight alongside us." "It's great that you guys can think like that." Kasuyi smiled. Everyone also expressed their welcome. With Baiger's attitude, the dissatisfaction of the beyond grade as present toward the revivers disappeared, and they felt much more pleasing to the eye. This time, Han Xiao asked, "By the way, did Dylan say anything about coming or not?" "He said you pooped." "Ahem. He said he didn't want to die," Baiger said helplessly. "It's still the same. I don't think he'll change his mind." "Then forget it. Let's not bother about him for now." Han Xiao shook his head. After understanding Dylan's experience, he could understand why Dylan was determined not to help the three universal civilizations. After all, due to the tragedy of the Pinnacles, this old man was so green that he could directly pretend to be a member of the World Tree. After casually encouraging him, Han Xiao hung up the call, walked out of the room, found a private location, and dialed Oathkeeper's number. Very soon, Oathkeeper's face appeared on the screen. Han Xiao did not make small talk and went straight to the point. "Did you say something to Baiger?" "Oh, is he preparing to join the battle?" "I did hint at him vaguely." Oathkeeper nodded gently and explained. Han Xiao chuckled. "You're quite good at dealing with people. Although I don't necessarily need the revivers to reveal the truth of the Sanctum Revival, it's fine to have more of them. These revivers were not the only materials to reveal the truth of the Sanctum Revival." Han Xiao had long considered the possibility that these revivers would not participate in the battle, and had actually made many preparations. The direct descendants of the advanced civilizations that had entered the Sanctum Revival this time were actually a backup plan. After all, the mentality of the direct descendants was different. They would most likely continue to accept the command of the civilization and throw their lives into the battlefield. This way, when these revived direct descendants died in battle, he would have the materials to reveal the truth of the Sanctum Revival. He did not necessarily need the revivers from before. Although Baiger had decided to participate in the battle, Han Xiao did not intend to change this plan and still made preparations. These thoughts flashed through Han Xiaoxin's mind, and he asked the question he was most concerned about. "How's the collection of Sanctum keys going?" "Very good. The resources given by the three universal civilizations and the Supercluster Alliance have made up for a lot of materials. The first Sanctum has already been collected, and the third Sanctum is almost done. Other than the sixth Sanctum, the other Sanctum keys have reached more than 75%. Han Xiao glanced at the data sent by Oathkeeper and could not help but smile. Although there was only one complete Sanctum key at the moment, it did not mean that the progress would return to zero after it was used up. This was because other than some materials that were extremely difficult to obtain, most of the other materials were repeated. The three universal civilizations had a lot of stock and were supplying them in batches. Han Xiao looked at the list of materials. Even if he used up all the keys to the first Sanctum, his progress would at most fall back to 70% to 80%. He only needed to get a few more rare materials, and he would be able to get another key to the first Sanctum. Not bad, not bad, Han Xiao muttered subconsciously. Seeing him focusing on the list, Oathkeeper's eyes suddenly flashed with a glint. Black Star was distracted. "Good opportunity. Humph, work hard. I represent the organization. Click." Without waiting for Oathkeeper to finish, Han Xiao ended the call decisively with a cold smile on his face. "Want to ambush me? Eat sh*T. Beep, beep, beep. The communicator rang, as if it was unwilling to give up. Han Xiao moved his lips, took a deep breath, and carefully received the communication. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw that it was not Oathkeeper who appeared on the screen. He hurriedly stopped. "Herberlin, I received your battle report. It's unbelievable. How'd you do it?" Herberlin's electronic image showed an exaggerated expression of surprise. Herberlin did not participate in this battle. On one hand, his body had not been fully adjusted, and on the other hand, he would definitely be recognized by the World Tree. He was afraid that there would be variables, so it was not convenient for him to participate in the first wave of battle. Only when the information on both sides was irreversible could he be allowed to fight at ease. You mean the damage to the high-level combatants? Han Xiao pinched his chin and teased. If I have to say something, it can only be attributed to my wisdom. He had only meant to joke, but he did not expect Herberlin to nod with a serious expression. Indeed, without you, the three universal civilizations would not have such a battle record. Han Xiao opened his mouth, not knowing what to say. I didn't expect you to be a bootlicker too. I originally thought that even if you could defeat the World Tree, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. I didn't expect you to be so strong. Herberlin was a little excited. Because the Karma Republic had lost too badly, Herberlin had a deep psychological shadow of the World Tree. However, the battle report of this great victory gave him confidence. He saw the hope of this universal civilization defeating the World Tree, and there was indeed a chance for revenge by hugging this thigh. Only then was he finally willing. If there are any tough battles in the future, you must use my strength. Herberlin's expression became solemn. All right, even if you didn't say it, I wouldn't let you be idle. Han Xiao could only give him a few words of encouragement before hanging up. Just as he put away the communicator, footsteps sounded behind him. Han Xiao turned around and saw Hela walking over. Do you have time now? Follow me to the underworld. Hela's face was cold as she slowly said, If you don't go now, those newly accepted hero spirits will probably rebel. All right, let's go. Han Xiao nodded, changed into king, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Underworld dimension. Densely packed, newborn hero spirits stood on the pitch-black ground. Countless people had blank expressions on their faces. Their memories were still frozen at the scene before their deaths, and the pain on their bodies did not seem to have disappeared. In a flash, they arrived in this space. Where is this? Why am I here? I should have been killed by the explosion. Why am I still alive? No, what's wrong with my body? Why can't I feel anything? The commotion quickly spread, and countless hero spirits became more and more flustered. They questioned while observing their surroundings, trying to figure out the current situation. These newborn hero spirits came from different civilizations, organizations, and all kinds of species. Many of them were serious soldiers, and they were all vigilantly observing the hero spirits around them. At this moment, streams of light suddenly gathered above everyone and condensed into Onisilu's figure. She had a kind smile on her face. Everyone, this is the underworld. You've already sacrificed yourselves on the battlefield, but you're not completely dead. Your souls were brought here, and you've been reborn as hero spirits here. Her voice was transmitted to everyone's ears through the power of the underworld. Countless newborn heroic spirits looked up at Onisilu in the sky with shock. We really sacrificed ourselves. I thought it was a dream. We can only leave the underworld with permission. So, we've lost our freedom and become slaves? Countless newborn hero spirits were in an uproar. They had become someone else's slave without any mental preparation. They could not accept it at once. This feeling was like being forcefully bought and sold. They did not have the freedom to refuse and could only be arranged by others. Furthermore, the other party had taken away their souls while they were dying in battle. It gave everyone the feeling that they were taking advantage of them. It was simply picking up corpses. Many people were furious. Let me out. I don't care who you are. I won't be your slave. Controlling my soul? Don't even think about it. The endless number of newborn heroic spirits roared together, and their momentum was extremely shocking. It was as if they were going to shatter the earth, as if they were going to rebel in the next second. However, Onisilu's expression did not change. She only gently made a zipping motion with her finger. The next second, the entire world fell silent. No matter how the newborn hero spirits roared, they could not make a sound. Looking at the countless newborn hero spirits covering their throats in shock and anger, Onisilu shook her head helplessly and explained, In the underworld, I'm the absolute ruler. In the underworld, I'm the absolute ruler. I control all of your actions. Furthermore, in the soul state, you don't have any combat power. However, the more this was the case, the angrier the countless newborn hero spirits became. Since they could not make a sound, They used their actions to express their anger. Instantly, they scattered like birds and beasts, wanting to escape. However, Onisalu just changed her hand gesture, and this area was isolated from the outside world, becoming a circular space. Once the newborn hero spirits crossed the border, they would come back from the opposite border, unable to leave. Very soon, countless newborn hero spirits fell into despair and stopped running in vain. Countless angry eyes stared at Onisalu in the sky. Swoosh! However, at this moment a light flashed in the sky, and two figures appeared out of thin air. They were Han Xiao and Hela. Countless newborn hero spirits immediately turned to look and were stunned. There was no one present who did not recognize Black Star. Huh, what's going on here? Han Xiao noticed that something was wrong as soon as he arrived. He turned around and glanced at Onisalu. You took away their voices? Yes, because they're a little angry. I didn't have time to explain everything. Onisalu explained. It's fine. I'm already here. Release them. Han Xiao waved his hand. Onisalu did as she was told, and the newborn hero spirits immediately returned to normal. However, they did not continue to make a fuss. They all looked at Han Xiao with different expressions. Han Xiao's reputation was extremely high now. When they saw him, most of the newborn hero spirits quickly calmed down. They did not trust Onisalu, but they trusted Black Star. Yo, you're quite self-aware. Han Xiao glanced at them and was overjoyed. His reputation was already so great. Just showing his face was enough to calm the emotions of these people. At this moment, a newborn hero spirit spoke loudly. Black Star, are you the one who brought us here? Hearing that, Han Xiao looked down at him and realized that he was an imperial official. He shook his head, patted Hela beside him, and said, Hela and Aurora are the masters of the underworld. I asked them to use the underworld to save the soldiers who died in the war. That's how you all came here. Without waiting for the newborn hero spirits to question him, Han Xiao continued with a deep voice. Only beyond grade as can enjoy the Sanctum Revival. You guys don't meet the conditions. If you die in battle, you'll really die. However, all of you are precious talents of the Galactic Society, and I can't bear to see you sacrificed so easily. The underworld is my only way to save you, so I had no choice. Now that the enemy is watching, every bit of strength is extremely important. This is to protect our limited armed forces. The three universal civilizations are also aware of this and support this plan. Although becoming a hero spirit of the underworld would mean losing your freedom, it's better than sacrificing yourself. Here, everyone can still shine for the Galactic Society and return to the battlefield to resist the enemy. However, please understand that we have never thought of treating you as slaves. I hereby promise that when the war is over, if any of you are unwilling to stay in the underworld, I can remove your hero spirit state and let you rest in peace. After saying that, the crowd was in an uproar. The expressions of the newborn hero spirits changed, and their emotions were very complicated. Some were conflicted, some were relieved, and some were relieved. However, no matter what they thought, the anger in their hearts slowly dissipated, and they calmed down. Onisalu was a stranger, so her words did not matter. However, Black Star was someone the entire Galactic Society knew, so his words were trustworthy. Since they were already here, there was no way they could resist, so they could only accept this reality. Furthermore, Black Star had promised that they could choose to remove the control of the underworld in the future and not become slaves forever. Although they did not know if Black Star would fulfill his promise, they could only believe it now. Furthermore, after calming down, not many people really wanted to rest in peace. Their current state was better than dying completely. Seeing that the newborn hero spirits had quieted down, Han Xiao turned to look at Hela and shrugged. Done. My job is done. I'll arrange these people for you. His goal of appearing here was only to appease these newborn hero spirits. With his extremely high reputation and legendary points in the explored universe, no one was more suitable for this job than him. In other words, his status in the explored universe was comparable to that of a face fruit user. He could stabilize the morale of the army just by showing his face. Okay, Hela was a woman of few words. She turned to communicate with the newborn hero spirits and explained in more detail. Han Xiao, on the other hand, scanned the boundless sea of people and exhaled softly. War was indeed an opportunity for the underworld to grow rapidly. It was a wave of benefits. He had plundered so many hero spirits this time and poached countless talents from various organizations. The value was extraordinary. However, if he wanted all these people to be of use, Han Xiao clicked his tongue and suddenly had a subtle worry about Aurora's breast volume. With so much breast power, I have a feeling that she'll become flat-chested in the future. Chapter 1363. A day later, in the meeting room of the three universal civilizations. You're planning to revive the sanctum and summon our direct descendants? Bruce, Lewis, and the ethereal Pope stared at Han Xiao's remote projection in the room with surprise. Han Xiao spread his hands and said seriously, "The World Tree has countless experts. Due to a special mechanism, the number of beyond grade as will not decrease, and they have accumulated to their current scale. As for us, due to war and other reasons, our beyond grade as have been lost time and time again. Although we repelled the World Tree's attack this time, they did not bring out all their high-level combatants. We have to expand the scale of the beyond grade as to slowly reverse the disadvantage in terms of individual strength." The three leaders looked at each other and were pleasantly surprised. When they signed the agreement, there was no clause that restricted Black Star from reviving the direct descendants. They knew that the Beyond Grade A Association was still wary of the three universal civilizations. Even if there were external enemies, Black Star might not awaken their direct descendants to increase the strength of their competitors. Therefore, the three of them were pleasantly surprised when Black Star took the initiative to mention this matter. Regardless of whether Black Star was doing it to share the pressure of the association members or purely for the sake of the war, this was beneficial to them. The direct descendants of the three universal civilizations had generations of beyond grade as, including national pillars like Claudi and Ulu, who were guardians of different eras. If they could all be summoned back, it would be a huge supplement to the high-level combatants of the three universal civilizations. This is a very wise choice. I'm glad to see that you're willing to consider the big picture. Bruce exclaimed in admiration. Han Xiao did not mind and raised his finger. However, there's a condition. These revived direct descendants have to join the main battlefield. Of course. Lewis nodded. He understood what Han Xiao meant. It was impossible for the revived direct beyond grade as to sit behind the scenes and watch the association members fight for their lives. All right, since we have such a consensus, we can talk about the cost. Han Xiao put down his hand. Cost. Do you think this is free? Han Xiao raised his brows. No, tell me the price. The ethereal Pope shook his head. Due to the righteous nature of Black Star's sudden offer of help, the three of them had nearly believed that it was free of charge. However, now that they had snapped out of their daze, they knew very well that with Black Star's temperament, it was unlikely that he would let go of this opportunity to make a fortune. Although the two sides were currently in a partnership to defend against foreign enemies, the services that should be charged couldn't be free. After all, the two sides are only allies. The three of them had no objections to this. Now was the time to beg for help. It was rare for them to have a chance to revive a direct descendant of history. No matter how high the cost was, they had to bear the pain and pay. Han Xiao opened a virtual screen, made a list, and sent it to the three of them. The three of them quickly browsed through the list. There were all kinds of resources, materials, and weapons on the list. Although they were expensive, they were still within an acceptable range. You want these things? That's right. Follow the list. This is the price to exchange for the Sanctum Revival. Sure. Bruce agreed readily. Han Xiao nodded. There were still materials for the Sanctum Key on the list. Borrowing the power of the three universal civilizations to collect materials and provide for him to enter the Sanctum was equivalent to spending the three universal civilizations' money to increase his Sanctum authority. What do you plan to start? Lewis asked. Destiny's Child surveillance has confirmed that the World Tree civilization won't make any big movements in the short term. I will use the Sanctum revival soon. Han Shao nodded, paused, and said, also, when I use the Sanctum revival, I will temporarily leave the main universe for about 3 months. During this time, I won't be able to contact you. During my absence, Hello will be in charge of relaying the information from Destiny's Child surveillance channel. 3 months. The three of them felt their hearts sink. If the World Tree made any movements during this period, without Blackstar, there might be changes. The three of them suddenly realized that they had unknowingly developed a certain level of dependence on Blackstar. Ever since they discovered the World Tree, Blackstar's actions had established most of their current advantages and accumulated a very high degree of trust. He was extremely competent as a special consultant, and to a certain extent, the three of them almost treated Han Shao as the backbone to deal with the World Tree civilization. Without Blackstar around, they subconsciously felt less confident. If you're worried that the World Tree will send another Tree King, you can let Wernos participate in the battle. With his abilities, it won't be a problem for him to block a Tree King, Han Xiaoxin said. In his previous life, Wernos did not participate in the battle, and this time he was still one of the few direct beyond grade as it was not drafted. It was very strange. Han Shao was also very curious why the Arcane Church did not send this B** start out. Even if his main body did not go, he could have sent a few god incarnations. There are some special reasons that make it inconvenient for him to make a move. The Ethereal Pope shook his head. What special reason can be more important than the threat of the World Tree? Han Shao raised his brows. When he fought with me, he was full of energy, but when facing external enemies, he had all kinds of excuses. Could it be that Wernos was the type to be submissive to the outside world, but to the inside world? Anyway, there are some reasons. The Ethereal Pope kept his mouth shut. Suddenly, he changed the topic and said, by the way, can you unseal the 10,000 deity scepter? Wernos is not participating in the battle, and he's asking me to unseal his weapon. Even if he doesn't use it, the 10,000 deity scepter is still a great weapon against individual strength. We'll see. Han Shao did not comment. The 10,000 deity scepter could indeed increase the combat strength of high-level combatants, but he did not plan to unseal the Arcane Church yet. After pausing for a moment, he spoke again. I need to obtain some mediums related to the revival target. Which direct descendants do you want to revive? Give me their mediums in the next few days. The three of them nodded, and their hearts skipped a beat. They were also organizing people to study the sanctums. This was the first time they knew that the sanctums needed a medium to revive. However, it was normal. If they did not need a medium, wouldn't even the beyond grade, as of other unknown civilizations, be able to revive at will? This time, Han Shao added one more thing. This time, I will revive some of the direct descendants of the Supercluster Alliance. The expressions of the three of them changed slightly. At this moment, the three of them thought of many things and subconsciously thought that this was Blackstar's way of balancing the three of them. Reviving the direct descendants of the three universal civilizations was a threat to the Beyond Grade A Association. Therefore, Blackstar deliberately revived the direct descendants of the Supercluster Alliance, forming a tripartite balance to restrict the three universal civilizations. This method could also be explained by reviving the direct descendants of the three universal civilizations. Considering the overall situation of the war, the three of them, as the ones who benefited from this reason, could not refute. Don't think too much. I just made a deal with the Supercluster Alliance in the past. I don't plan to go against this agreement. Han Shao ignored their gazes and replied casually. It's only right. The three of them adjusted their mentality and regained their composure. Many of the direct descendants of the Supercluster Alliance had died in the tragedy of the Pinnacles. The hatred between the two sides was deeply rooted. Once they were revived, it would definitely be troublesome. However, the Sanctum revival was controlled by Blackstar, so they could only accept this change. Furthermore, the three of them believed that as long as their direct descendants were revived, they would not have to worry about the supercluster alliance causing trouble. The two sides quickly reached a consensus. Just as Han Xiao was about to end the communication, he suddenly thought of something and asked, "By the way, how's the progress of the secondary dimension expedition team? There have been some losses, but we still haven't found anything." Mar Bruce shook his head. Hearing this, Han Xiao sighed. The World Tree civilization still did not know that they had sent troops to search for the main body long ago. The secondary dimension expedition team was the true winner of the three universal civilizations. In the Supercluster Alliance's joint conference room, after meeting the leaders of the three universal civilizations, Han Xiao immediately went to the Supercluster Alliance. At this moment, the leaders of the Supercluster civilizations were all in the room, staring at Han Xiao. "Black Star, the results of your battle this time are shocking. Before you came, we were still talking about you. If we didn't know your abilities, we would have thought that the enemy this time was very weak." The leaders of the civilizations praised him. "It's not bad. It's mainly because the Beyond Grade has worked together," Han Xiao casually replied. He observed the expressions of the leaders of the civilizations present and quickly calculated in his mind. With his understanding of the supercluster civilizations, these people were most likely looking forward to waiting for the three universal civilizations and the World Tree to suffer so that they could take over. Therefore, seeing such low losses, the Supercluster Alliance might not be too happy. He remembered that in his previous life, the Supercluster Alliance even had a plan, which was to take their civilization and leave the explored universe while the three universal civilizations were fighting the World Tree. They thought that the three universal civilizations would not have the energy to stop them and could only watch them leave. However, after experiencing the perverted strength of the World Tree civilization, the Supercluster Alliance understood that this was akin to drinking poison to quench thirst. In the end, they did not use this plan and wholeheartedly cooperated with the three universal civilizations to fight the enemy. Han Xiao estimated that the Supercluster Alliance most likely had similar thoughts. After being bullied by the three universal civilizations for so long, it was impossible for them not to have considered this route. Just as he was thinking, the Star Arc leader knocked on the table and asked, "Black Star, why are you contacting us this time?" Han Xiao calmed himself down and said, "I'm here to fulfill the agreement." "Which agreement?" "I promised you 10 direct Beyond Grade as for the Sanctum Revival. Now is the time." As soon as he said that, the Star Arc leader and the other leaders of the civilizations were overjoyed. After reaching an agreement, the Supercluster Alliance quickly gathered the revival fees and handed them to Han Xiao. However, it was Black Star who had the final say on when to revive. They did not know how long Black Star would drag it out, but they had already paid the deposit, so they could only wait patiently. Now, they had finally become the mother-in-law. This spare tire was worth it. As expected, in the end, everything was available. The Star Arc leader suppressed his excitement and said, "Got it. Do we need to prepare anything?" "We need some mediums." Han Xiao repeated his explanation to the three universal civilizations, and everyone nodded. After explaining, Han Xiao looked around at everyone's expressions, smiled, and said, "There's another thing. I'll still give you 10 slots for the next revival. You still need to buy them. You could discuss among yourselves if you want to increase the price." "Of course we accept," the Star Arc leader immediately said. 10 slots were far from enough to revive all the historical Beyond Grade as of their supercluster civilization. Since Black Star was willing to sell another 10 slots, there was naturally no reason to refuse. "You don't have to be in a hurry to bid. It won't be too late to wait until I bring this batch of revivers back." Han Xiao waved his hand. The two sides exchanged a few more words before hanging up. Only the leaders of the civilizations were left in the conference room, and their faces finally revealed joy. "When our direct descendants return, our plan will be even more confident. Black Star has helped us greatly this time." The Star Arc civilization leader took a deep breath and was excited. What they did not know was that Black Star, who only gave them 10 slots each time, sold an unlimited number of revival slots to the three universal civilizations. 2 days later, somewhere in the ancient Star Desert, The spaceship of the Holy Covenant organization was floating in the starry sky, warming up the equipment and preparing to open the Sanctum channel. Han Xiao stayed in the main ship and was talking to Hela and the other upper echelons. While I'm using the Sanctum revival, the army will be under your command. Pay attention to preserving your strength. If the World Tree makes a move, Aurora, you have to pay attention to protecting yourself. It's best to persuade Manison, Kasuyi, and the others to temporarily be your bodyguards. This time, the World Tree has lost quite a number of experts, so they won't revive so quickly. The intensity shouldn't be too high. Don't worry, I have the strength to protect myself now. Aurora nodded. However, you have to be careful. If anything happens, you'd better evacuate. I've provided Herberlin with some kings. Although he hasn't participated in the battle for the time being, if there's any danger, he'll use his mechanical force to teleport you away. After giving some instructions, Han Xiao handed over the command to the officers before hanging up. If you're done, shall I begin? Oathkeeper asked. Come on. Han Xiao nodded. The order was passed down, and rays of light shot out from the spaceship of the Holy Covenant organization and entered the key of the First Sanctum. Very soon, a familiar scene appeared again. The shadows of 6 light gates appeared, and only one was left, which turned into the passageway to the First Sanctum. Han Xiao took a deep breath and turned into a meteor, diving into the Sanctum passageway. The next moment, the light gate quickly shrank, and a slender light flashed past, like the scene when an old-fashioned television was turned off. Under everyone's gazes, the Sanctum passageway and Han Xiao disappeared together, leaving nothing behind. Oathkeeper exhaled. The annoying guy was gone. He could finally experience the feeling of being the boss again. Chapter 1364. The tunnel filled with endless streams of light seemed to be able to travel through time. His senses became hazy and blurry, as if his mind had sunk into an old dream in the depths of his memory. After an unknown period of time, his vision suddenly opened up and his consciousness returned. Han Zhao's vision cleared, and he looked around. He found that he had arrived at a boundless white world with countless balls of light floating. He had a deep impression of such a scene. Phew, I'm in. Han Xiao relaxed his mind, turned his head to look at the collapsing tunnel, and clenched his hand. A wave of energy emerged from his body and turned into a mark on his palm. The Sanctum passage immediately stabilized. He retracted his palm and took a look. This mark was formed by 8 patterns. It was the level 8 authority of the First Sanctum. I have to hurry. Han Xiao calmed himself down and immediately began to move. This was his second time entering the Sanctum, so he was already familiar with the way. The longer he stayed in the Sanctum, the more time passed in the outside world. The last time he entered the Third Sanctum, he had wasted a lot of time testing the functions of the Sanctum. This time, there was no need for that. Han Xiao took out many mediums and called for the Sanctum revival. There was an immediate reaction. Rays of light gathered and condensed into a Sanctum revival mark in midair in front of him, floating quietly. He reached out and touched it, and the Sanctum revival mark merged into his palm, turning into a tattoo-like mark. After checking the target of revival and the mark, Han Xiao nodded. Without any delay, he immediately began to touch the various information form light balls to collect different information. The information stored in the First Sanctum was closely related to mechanical technology. It stored the high-level blueprints developed by countless iteration civilizations, and many of them were universal treasures used by mechanics. The value of this information to Han Xiao was far greater than the value of the Third Sanctum. Han Zhao's authority level in the First Sanctum was higher than that of the Third Sanctum. His memory capacity was higher, and he could take away more technical information at once. Naturally, there was no reason for him to let go of such an opportunity to plunder technology here. The technology of the final civilizations of the various iterations entered Han Zhao's mind one after another, slowly reaching the memory capacity limit of the authority limit. It's finally full. The memory capacity of level 8 authority is much higher. Han Xiao stopped his plundering at the right time, feeling rather excited. This round of looting was a huge boost to his technological foundation. He had obtained many trump cards from iteration final civilizations, which would be enough for him to study for a long time. The number of blueprints in his inventory had greatly increased. The trump cards of these final civilizations were not simple, and their functions were complicated. The strategic value of some of these technologies was not inferior to the Radiant Federation's multidimensional sky-opening transportation device. Bringing these precious technologies out this time was equivalent to obtaining a new trump card to fight against the World Tree Civilization, increasing the Galactic Society's war capital. After being happy for a while, Han Xiao suppressed his emotions. After doing these two things, his goal of opening the sanctum would be completed. After looking around, Han Xiao suddenly thought of something and used the sanctum authority to summon the message board of the iteration civilization. The last time he entered the third sanctum, due to his authority, a lot of the information on the message board was empty. This time, he had higher authority in the first sanctum, so he should be able to see more information. Han Xiao planned to take a look before he left. The sanctum authority mark emitted rays of light and quickly weave into a message board that floated in front of Han Xiao. Han Xiao browsed through it carefully and compared it to the content of the third sanctum in his memory. As expected, he realized that many of the empty content from the last time had become visible. He looked down line by line and paused on the fifth last paragraph of the Celestial Star Alliance's record. Then, he looked at the last 4 paragraphs with the most empty content. Compared to what he had seen in the third sanctum, most of the last 4 paragraphs were still covered, but some new content was also revealed. Among them, the 4th last paragraph had the most content. In a large gap, a few pieces of information appeared. According to the research results of the Joint Observation Institute, the Great Reboot will take place in the future. We have learned from the lessons of the previous iteration and formulated the information form stripping plan. We hope that the long relay can end in our hands. Our civilization is called civilization. If the civilization of the subsequent iterations is to us, then it proves that our plan is wrong. Please change to a new route. Is this the next iteration of the Celestial Star Alliance? Han Xiao pondered. It looked like it was another message from a civilization that had not survived the Great Reboot. Although his authority was not enough to show the name of this civilization, making it impossible to search for the other party's information form light sphere, he learned that the other party's plan to survive the Great Reboot was called the Information Form Stripping Plan. Information Form Stripping sounds interesting. Han Xiao stroked his chin and muttered. Other than this paragraph, the other information that appeared in the last 4 paragraphs were all fragmentary words and did not have much value. The level 8 authority was not enough to fully view this part of the content. After browsing through it again and memorizing the many messages, Han Xiao closed the message board and flew toward the sanctum passage. The second day Han Xiao entered the sanctum. In the main base of the interceptor circle, many beyond grade as were on standby. When there were no combat missions, they would do their own things. In the exclusive activity room, some of the beyond grade as were resting or having fun, chatting casually. Kasui was playing cards with Secret Master, and a group of people were watching from aside. We've lost contact with Black Star. I wonder how many troublesome fellows he's going to bring back this time. Sun Hunter, who was the size of a finger, stood on the card table with his arms crossed and spoke in a low voice. Kasui threw out a Kasui card and smiled helplessly. It's indeed troublesome. After all, some of the historical beyond grade as have complicated relationships with us. The first 2 batches of revived beyond grade as did not have much contact with the current beyond grade as, but this time the target of revival was different. Many of them were their acquaintances. Ahem, to be honest, I'm not ready to meet my ancestor yet. Milizau's had a headache. He was the patriarch of the astral spiritual dragon race, and the astral spiritual dragon race was a branch bloodline left behind by a beyond grade, a magic blue dragon, which could be considered his ancestor. Milizau's was not the only one who had such an encounter. The beyond grade, as that Black Star was preparing to revive this time, had a similar relationship with many of the people present. It would have been fine if that was all, but many of them had enmity with each other. Thinking that their enemies were about to revive, many of them felt uneasy. Originally, everything would be over if they died, and their hatred would be put down. However, now that their enemies had all come back to life, should they still pursue their past grudges? This was especially so for the victims of the tragedy of the Pinnacles represented by Dylan. Everyone felt that they would definitely not let this matter rest. When these people are revived by Black Star in the Sanctum, it'll be good if they don't fight. Kant shook his head. Hela, who was resting in a corner with her eyes closed, did not open them. What's there to be afraid of? If Black Star can revive them, he can also stuff them back into their graves. If they cause trouble, I'll be happy to send them to the underworld. Hearing this, everyone turned to look at her, speechless. That's the logic, but saying it in front of us feels like you're warning us. Everyone curled their lips and looked away. Humph! Although they're sisters, Aurora is still cuter. Hela is right. At a time like this, we can't waste a single soldier. Kasuyi chuckled. After Han Xiao entered the Sanctum, Kasuyi and Hela became the backbone of the association. The former was the vice president, and Hela did not have enough reputation. However, Han Xiao had given her the intelligence channel of Destiny's Child to contact, so Hela temporarily enjoyed a transcendent status. Speaking of which, although Black Star is shameless and cunning, he's still very hardworking when it comes to fighting for the interests of the Beyond Grade, as in maintaining the safety of the Galactic Society. He's almost like a different person, Sun Hunter said. That's because you don't understand him. Cunning is just a means. I've always felt that Black Star is an idealist who plans for the peace of the universe and has noble pursuits that transcend reality. Biger's tone was solemn. He was an old bootlicker. Forget it. Black Star is purely an opportunist, but his common interests are the same as ours. Don't flatter him. Heber snorted. The group of people started a heated discussion about what kind of person Black Star was. Anyway, Han Xiao was not here, and it was not convenient for them to complain in front of him. Now, they could say whatever they wanted. On the other side, Manison stayed alone in the observation tower of the main base, silently looking at the starry sky. He was playing with a cube-like polyhedron in his hand. It looked like some kind of mechanism, and the complicated mechanical structure kept sliding, making clicking sounds. This was a child's initiation toy used by the mechanical race to cultivate mechanical sense from a young age. The ancestor might be coming back, Manison muttered to himself with complicated feelings. He was the second Beyond Grade A born in the mechanical race, and he also had a distant ancestor. Although he had become an independent species after advancing to the Beyond Grade A realm, this relationship still counted, especially since Manison was now the only leader of the mechanical race and treated the mechanical race as his important capital. If the ancestor of the mechanical race returned and wanted to become the leader of the mechanical race again, who would the mechanical race listen to? A mountain could not accommodate two tigers. Would his position be affected because of this? Unfortunately, the target of the Sanctum revival was decided by Black Star. As long as he found the medium, he could freely choose the target. Manison could not control Han Zhao's thoughts. He even suspected that Black Star was doing it on purpose. Not to mention Manison's thoughts, Claudia and Olu were also in a dilemma. The two of them were waiting at the dock of the base, watching the huge starships enter the port along the tracks. Olu lit a cigarette, exhaled a mouthful of light blue smoke, and slowly said, "The former direct descendants will be revived soon. Are you nervous?" "Why should I be nervous?" Claudia was expressionless. Don't tell me you're not traumatized by them at all." Olu sneered. Claudia did not say anything. He was now a direct descendant of the dynasty with the highest status, but he was still a junior in front of the previous generation. Claudia was not the national pillar as soon as he advanced to the Beyond Grade A realm. Before he grew up, there was still the previous national pillar supporting the dynasty's prestige. At the same time, due to his powerful Esper ability, Claudia was the focus of the dynasty's nurturing. The previous generation's national pillar was his special training instructor, and he could be considered half a teacher. He had left an indelible impression on Claudia. If God had not died, he would have also received his special training. The old would teach the new, and this would be passed down from generation to generation. Although Black Star's starting point is for the sake of the war. Olu took another puff of his cigarette, shook his head, and said, "This kind of action will probably put many people in an unimaginable situation." Claudia shook his head. Facing the many seniors who were about to revive, the entire Beyond Grade A group could not help but have their own thoughts. Chapter 1365. In the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed. The military mobilization of the various star fields in the explored universe continued, especially in the flickering world. Under the construction of the engineering fleet and various planet modifications, the various war facilities in the large war zones were quickly perfected. The military factories all over the world were activated all day long, and countless starships of various models left the factory every day. The recruitment of supers led by the three universal civilizations was also in full swing. They recruited a large number of supers from various races, and, at the same time, recalled a large number of reserve soldiers who had once served in the military. They received further military training in the various military bases to fill up the gaps in the various military posts. They also forcefully carried out entry-level military training among the galactic citizens to expand the number of soldiers. The speed of war mobilization in the galactic era was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Under the unified command of the three universal civilizations, the war machines of the explored universe operated efficiently. All kinds of resources were thrown into the corresponding gaps and used efficiently. The construction of the frontline intercepting circle was also progressing rapidly. Although the World Tree's attack had failed, it did not stop the harassment of small groups of troops and exchanged fire with the intercepting troops many times. As the space stabilization anchor orbit that the three universal civilizations had set up was getting further and further away, the World Tree civilization's jump point was also moving further and further away from the intercepting circle. Therefore, the World Tree also treated destroying the space stabilization anchor orbit as an important combat goal. It sent vanguard troops to attack the space stabilization anchor orbit in different sections many times, unsealed different jump points, and placed reconnaissance troops at these coordinates. Due to the World Tree's reconnaissance troops constantly splitting up, the entire structure of the space stabilization anchor orbit was like a three-dimensional tree model with many forks. It continued to extend, and countless streams of light representing the fleets of both sides jumped between the tree branches. From time to time, they would collide and break out into local battles. The three universal civilizations' main base's surveillance radar kept showing high-intensity energy sources representing the battle points. The World Tree troops could occasionally succeed, blowing up the branches of the space stabilization anchor orbit many times. They needed to be repaired and chase after the new batch of reconnaissance troops that the World Tree had placed at this jump point. As the intercepting circle and the space stabilization anchor orbit expanded, the number of breakthroughs left for the enemy would also increase. This was an unavoidable trend. However, the three universal civilizations' troops could still deal with the current defense line. The World Tree's harassment is endless. Although this is an effective method, it will take a long time. They must have made 2 preparations and are brewing a new wave of attacks behind our backs. They will create a huge gap in our defense line and strip us of our control over the intercepting circle. In the combat conference room of the main base of the interceptor circle, Simon was discussing with the commanders and staff officers in a low voice. In the month that Black Star had not been around, the two sides had constantly had small conflicts, but there were no large-scale battles. The overall situation was still rather stable, and the number of times that the Beyond Grade as were dispatched could be counted on one hand. The monitoring channel of Destiny's Child that Hela was in charge of did not send any news of the World Tree making a big move. The two sides were in a stalemate for the time being, attacking and defending each other. The enemy did not make much progress. Simon and the others naturally understood that the World Tree would not continue to tangle with them like this. In the past few days, he had a strong tactical intuition that there would be some changes in the near future. According to the data statistics, in the past 5 days, the frequency of the World Tree's attacks on the Space Stabilization Anchor orbit has decreased by 37%, and the number of reconnaissance troops has increased by 73%. Furthermore, we have discovered that the World Tree Army has left a large number of topological space directional targets near the anchor orbit. It is speculated that the World Tree civilization is trying to launch over-the-horizon weapons at the jump points that are not covered by the orbit to remotely destroy the various orbital branches. Simon pressed his hands on the command console with a solemn expression. Another commander nodded and said, "The anti-over-the-horizon radar has been activated all day. If the World Tree adopts this plan, the Dynasty's over-the-horizon anti-particle base cannon, the Radiance's psionic star annihilation beam, and the ethereal psionic state sniper beam can all lock onto the source of the attack and carry out the counterattack mission. I'm just afraid that the World Tree will set up the Lerbo space protection belt. That won't be good." Simon shook his head. Over-the-horizon combat was also the main form of interstellar warfare. In this regard, the three universal civilizations were strong in offense and weak in defense. But the World Tree was different. In information provided by Black Star, it was claimed that the World Tree civilization had a universal treasure-level special defensive weapon used for over-the-horizon combat called the Lerbo Space Protection Belt. This defensive technology had a similar effect as the psionic seal ring. It was like a portable and miniaturized version, distorting the universal constants of an area, making it impossible for energy-type long-range weapons, such as over-the-horizon attacks, to penetrate, forming a protective zone. However, this restriction was two-way. The external energy attacks could not pass through, and the attacks from the inside out would also be blocked. Therefore, it was difficult for the fleet that activated the Lerbo Space Protection Belt to launch an attack. Because the Lerbo Space Protection Belt could not move with the spaceship after it was activated, it was basically not used in mobile warfare. It was usually used to protect some important facilities in positional warfare. Only physical weapons, such as interstellar missiles and the close-range charge of starships, could ignore the effect of the Lerbo Space Protection Belt. Other energy weapons were basically useless. Most of the over-the-horizon weapons were energy weapons, so this technology was often used in over-the-horizon combat. The protective belt was retracted when the cannon was fired and opened when the fire was stopped. This way, it would be very difficult to be at a disadvantage in over-the-horizon combat. Just as the upper echelons of the group were discussing, the global monitoring radar that covered all the space anchor orbits suddenly sounded an alarm. Hundreds of red lines representing high-energy strikes suddenly broke into the edge of the radar's vision and quickly hit different forked orbits. The three-dimensional radar model in front of everyone reacted, and hundreds of red ripples appeared. The damage report of the orbit was quickly sent back. It's confirmed that it's an over-the-horizon strike. The World Tree really did it. Simon's expression froze. Speak of the devil. He had just mentioned the over-the-horizon strike when the World Tree's attack wave arrived. His recent intuition had come true. The jump point where the World Tree released the over-the-horizon weapon was outside the range of the global monitoring radar. It was unknown how far away it was. Analyze the attack trajectory and counterattack, Simon ordered with a deep voice. The anti-over-the-horizon radar was activated and quickly analyzed the curvature, deviation, star positions, and other factors of the hundreds of enemies over-the-horizon attacks. It assisted the artificial intelligence to quickly calculate the huge amount of data. Over-the-horizon strikes were usually not straight lines. Under various cosmic environmental factors, the attack trajectory would show different deviations. Just like how a sniper needed to calculate the wind direction, distance, trajectory, gravity, and other conditions, over-the-horizon strikes were the same. They needed to calculate more parameters and correct the direction of the attack. The calculation model was very complicated, and the reverse lock was to reverse engineer these factors to obtain the coordinates of the attack source. Very soon, The final result was transmitted to the over-the-horizon weapons set up by the three universal civilizations through the quantum communication. Clank! Rows of giant cannons extended from an enormous planetary fortress. The base slowly rotated, and the muzzle turned as if it was aimed at the empty starry sky. In reality, the over-the-horizon crosshair had already locked onto the spatial coordinates calculated by the artificial intelligence. Then, starting from the root of the cannon, the energy circuit lit up one by one. Dark blue particles gathered rapidly from all directions, accumulating energy at the muzzle of the cannon, emitting a dazzling light. When the power reached its peak, the color turned from blue to red, and it suddenly released energy beams with a huge diameter, disappearing into the vast starry sky in the blink of an eye. However, this round of counterattack was like a stone sinking into the sea, and there was no news. Simon and the others waited for a while, but what they waited for was the second wave of over-the-horizon strikes from the World Tree. Hundreds of orbital branches were destroyed, and the source of the attack was the same. The counterattack doesn't seem to have any effect. Maybe you're right. They used that kind of protective technology. A commander glanced at Simon and cursed. Continue firing. Wave attack. Don't stop. Simon frowned slightly. The over-the-horizon weapons of the three universal civilizations began to fire continuously. Although the effects of the attacks could not be observed, the enemy's over-the-horizon attacks also stopped. Even if the World Tree has set up the Lerbo Space Protection Belt, our firepower at this frequency is enough to suppress them and make them have no time to retract the protective belt. This way, they won't be able to continue attacking us, an advisor said. Simon knocked on the table and shook his head. This is only a temporary plan. If we want to solve this once and for all, we still have to send a fleet to attack and destroy their artillery strongholds. Call some beyond grade as to accompany us and try to seize the Lerbo Space Protection Belt for research. Not long after, the beyond grade as on standby in the base were summoned and came to the combat conference room. After hearing Simon's explanation, they quickly understood the situation. Kasuyi stroked his chin and asked, "Both of them have to destroy the special equipment. Since we want to destroy the enemy's artillery stronghold and seize the enemy's special equipment, then Manison or Kant will lead the team." How many people do we need? It's best if there are 10 beyond grade, as in a group of sovereigns. Simon nodded. Isn't 10 a little too much? We shouldn't encounter any World Tree experts this time. Sun Hunter turned to look at Hela. Can your surveillance channels see the situation of this artillery stronghold? No. Hela shook her head. The World Tree did not use the Prophet for the stronghold, and Destiny's Child could not see the composition of the other party. Therefore, everyone knew almost nothing about the situation of the stronghold. Currently, they only had the location calculated by the anti-over-the-horizon radar as a clue. This is all for safety reasons, Simon explained. The other party might not have built this stronghold just for long-range bombardment, but also as an outpost. We can't just sit back and watch the World Tree build a bridgehead. We have to take the initiative to attack and keep pushing their front line further away. The group discussed for a while and quickly decided that Kant would be the leader of this trip, leading the other 9 beyond grade as to attack. The association members and the direct descendants of the civilization were mixed. Because there were no World Tree experts among the targets, Aurora did not need to follow and remained in the main base. Very soon, Kant and the others formed an expedition team and arrived at the edge of the radar through the multidimensional sky opening transportation device, heading toward the temporary base of the World Tree. After sailing for a few days, the armed fleet of the 3 universal civilizations finally arrived at the target location. Outside the window, a group of galactic bases floated in this area. There were no blind spots around them, and they were surrounded by a hazy, glowing space. It was the Lerbo Space Protection Belt. Over-the-horizon light beams kept shooting from the back of this fleet. This was the suppression of the 3 universal civilizations' firepower that had lasted for several days. However, once they entered the Lerbo Space Protection Belt, the speed of the energy cannons immediately became like a turtle crawling. At the same time, The light beams quickly shrank until they dissipated. All their power was wiped out, as if they had entered an energy forbidden zone. It's here. There's no mistake. Kant's Lord's avatar's electronic eyes flashed, and the image was sent back to the main base. At the same time, the battleships of the three universal civilizations shot out interstellar missiles one after another, dragging their tails into the Lerbo space protection belt. The physical missiles were not affected much and headed straight for the temporary bases in the center. However, the next moment, the armor on the surface of the base slid, and rows of turrets rose. A metal storm suddenly sprayed out, forming an airtight barrage. Halfway through, all the interstellar missiles that were shot over-exploded, creating a series of fireworks. Energy weapons were ineffective, and physical missiles could not pass through the barrage. It was as difficult as a turtle shell. It's not easy. Looks like we have to attack inside and let the fleet pass through the Lerbo space protection belt. Only then will it be easier to launch an effective attack on their bases, the fleet commander said in the channel. The Lerbo space protection belt could not isolate the quantum network communication. Kant opened the quantum network vision and tried to invade the bases to seize control, but he was blocked by the firewall. There's a force protecting their firewall. I can't enter. Kant retracted his vision and hesitated. I feel like it's a trap. It's a little strange. Assault Team 2 and 3, go in and take a look. The fleet commander waved his hand and ordered a group of assault battleships to approach the other party's bases. The main force stayed around the main ship and did not move. After all, the other party had opened the Lerbo space protection belt, so they could not attack outside. Beep, beep, beep. However, at this moment, the radar on the ship suddenly let out an ear-piercing alarm. Hundreds of large-caliber planet-destroying beams suddenly shot over from another direction, heading straight for the armed fleet. There's a situation. Defense. Kant's expression changed. The mech legion surged out and formed shields. At the same time, the armed fleet also activated their own shields. The next moment, hundreds of beams of light shot over, blasting the shield until it was on the verge of collapse. Electric arcs shot out, and cracks appeared everywhere. This wave of beyond visual range attacks killed a small group of troops, but the rest of the power was blocked. However, before everyone could stabilize themselves, large-scale beyond visual range attacks came from all directions at the same time, causing the fleet to retreat step by step. The scene was transmitted back to the combat conference room of the main base. The expressions of Simon and the others changed slightly. Manison tapped the metal chin of the Lord's avatar and said, "It seems like the World Tree has built a beyond visual range camp of an unknown scale in an area that our radar has not touched. They use beyond visual range attack range to cover each other and guard each other. I'm afraid that their goal is not only to build an outpost, but also to use the Lerbo space protection belt to imitate us and create a firepower coverage area to wear down our military strength. What can you do?" Simon turned and asked, "If Black Star Surveillance Channel can't get the coordinates of these bases, as long as the bases don't fire, they will be invisible to us. The Lerbo space protection belt is too troublesome, and long-range attacks are almost useless. If we use troops to fill it, we will fall into the enemy's trap. This is not easy." Manison slowly shook his head. The three universal civilizations did have a sufficient amount of universal treasures, but the World Tree had conquered one civilization after another, and its foundation was even more shocking. It also had a lot of strategic weapons, and it could not be underestimated. Hearing this, Simon's expression was solemn, and he could not make up his mind. He pursed his lips and sighed. It's a pity that Black Star, the special consultant, is not here. Otherwise, I could ask for his opinion. Chapter 1366. Black Star's opinion was an important reference for the three universal civilizations when making decisions. It was as comfortable as reading a strategy and fighting monsters, allowing the upper echelons of the three universal civilizations to fully experience the joy of hugging someone's thigh. However, he could not contact Black Star now, so he could only think of a way himself and act according to the situation. Simon calmed himself down and slowly said, "Now, there are two solutions. One is to locate the various camp bases, and the other is to use an efficient and low-energy method to break through the Lurbo space protection belt and destroy the enemy's various artillery strongholds. If Destiny's Child surveillance does not yield any results, we can either passively wait for the various bases to launch over-the-horizon attacks and reverse analyze the source of the attacks, or wait for our control range to slowly cover it," a staff officer said. Hearing this, the ethereal commander shook his head and said, "As long as the world trees over the horizon camps exist, they will definitely destroy our space anchoring orbits, surveillance base stations, and other facilities, preventing us from expanding our control range. In the areas that we do not cover, the world tree can expand the scale of the camps at will. These resources are just a drop of water in the ocean to them. They can use extremely low costs to form a tug of war with us and obstruct our movements. So, from the looks of it, we can only wait for the other party to make a move before locking onto them. It's very passive. How about using reconnaissance ships to conduct a large-scale search? The area that we don't cover is too large. This method is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Furthermore, the other party will definitely place a large number of patrol fleets near the camp area. It won't work easily. What about mysticism?" Secret Master interrupted. "The world tree has targeted defenses in this regard, so we can't use mysticism to locate them." Everyone discussed for a while, but did not come up with an effective plan. They could only put aside the problem of locating them and discuss the attack method. Compared to locating them, destroying the base is not difficult. This time, the dynasty's commander said slowly, "We can use the space-time splicing technology to allow the small fleet to carry high-energy explosive bombs and directly pass through the Lurbo space protection belt to blow up the other party's base." Space-time splicing technology is indeed feasible. Simon pondered for a few seconds before nodding. During the war mobilization phase, the three universal civilizations had communicated with each other and briefly introduced most of their trump cards to each other. This was why the upper echelons of Radiance and Ethereal all knew that the dynasty had the space-time splicing technology. In terms of the method of attacking the camp, everyone had the same opinion. The space-time splicing technology was extremely suitable for this kind of large-scale attack. Compared to sending the army to take the brunt of the enemy's firepower, this was obviously a method with lower consumption. The cost was at most a few hundred warships and a group of dispensable suicide squads. The main reason was to be safe and switch to manual control in case of an accident. Everyone present had a good idea of who would be in the suicide squad. Let the immortals of our army carry out the space-time splicing mission. This is a job that they love, Aurora said, blinking her eyes. Sure. Simon had no objections. After pausing for a moment, he added, "It's best for the suicide squad to choose low-pollution bombs, and they have to be powerful enough. Otherwise, they won't even be able to blow up the shield of the base." After deciding on the method of attack, the group returned to the topic of positioning. There had to be a result. It's not impossible to passively wait for the enemy to attack, but if we can't block the enemy's attacks, our losses will only increase. We need to find a way to protect the various branches of the space stabilization anchor. With all due respect, it's almost impossible to protect the safety of all the orbital branches under the enemy's attack of an unknown scale and direction. After all, there are too many branches and the number is still increasing. We don't have a defensive device like the Lurbo space protection belt. At most, we can only try our best to clear the directional targets left behind by the enemy's small troops, an officer said helplessly. The enemy is in the dark while we are in the open. We can't deal with it for the time being. However, if we can seize and analyze the Lurbo space protection belt, we can have the same defensive advantage as the enemy and reduce our passivity. Simon pondered and said, "Therefore, other than the space-time splicing suicide squad attack, we still have to send official troops depending on the situation. The space-time splicing squad could only die and could not obtain any spoils of war. They still had to rely on high-level combatants. Currently, One of the few good news was that the targets of the world trees over-the-horizon attacks were limited. They either aimed at the directional targets left behind by the reconnaissance troops or the targets near the base. They could not accurately attack other locations. It was equivalent to every camp base being a trap. Only when the three universal civilizations' fleets attacked them would they be exposed, so they were not too worried about being attacked by over-the-horizon attacks on the way. Khan's army quickly retreated, losing a lot of men. Most of the outer armor of the remaining battleships had traces of damage. They did not complete the mission and could not destroy the World Tree base. The only gain was that when they were enduring the over-the-horizon attack from other directions, the intelligent calculation model had analyzed the locations of a few new camps, increasing the targets of the three universal civilizations' attacks. Not long after, the second batch of fleets set off, heading toward these bases separately. They were all equipped with the dynasty's improved space-time splicing device, which would only be activated when they arrived at their destination. The crew members were basically army players who had been recruited temporarily. They did not have the tragic atmosphere of a hero who would never return. The atmosphere of every battleship was very relaxed, and a large number of players had happy expressions on their faces. They did not look like a group of death squads, but more like they were on an outing. I didn't expect the rewards for such a suicidal mission to be so generous. Luckily, I got it. It's too easy to complete the mission just by sending people to their deaths. How comfortable. If we can do it a few more times, wouldn't it be equivalent to farming EXP? Hearing the excited discussions of the players around him, Madblade was also very happy. The players were the designated members of the Suicide Squad, and only the players could accept this mission. The mission briefly introduced the combat mission of the Space-Time Splicing Force. The players were shocked to find that this mission was actually not difficult for them at all, but the mission reward was so high that it was shocking. Even the credit of destroying the enemy base was given to them. It was equivalent to not doing anything. As long as they went out and sent a wave of heads, they would be able to obtain EXP. It was extremely easy, just like farming EXP. According to the forum, this combat mission was very important. It was actually very difficult and was equivalent to a suicide mission for normal soldiers. However, their innate advantages just happened to counter this difficulty, so they could obtain a high reward that did not seem to match the difficulty at all with a very small cost. Not many players were willing to miss such a good opportunity. Due to the limited number of slots, many players almost fought over it. Only a few people obtained the chance to go out and were overjoyed. Amidst the excited atmosphere of the players, the various fleets arrived at the different World Tree bases. Without a word, they activated the space-time splicing device and moved toward the base. All sorts of over-the-horizon attacks came one after another, shattering the fleet. However, the next moment, the fleet returned to normal and continued to jump forward. Very soon, they broke into the Lerbo space protection belt and were not affected. When the space-time splicing force was halfway there, the World Tree base sensed through the space radar that this was an unknown space-time technology. They quickly stopped their normal attacks and used space-time methods to target it. The space-time splicing technique was not unsolvable. Its nemesis was space-time technology. Back then, the dynasty had also used the same method to crack this black technology from the Kundi race. The World Tree base's response was very effective. The distance between each frame of the space-time splicing force began to shorten, and the flickering white noise on the surface became denser. The collapse speed increased. However, after many years of improvement by the Red Empire, although the space-time splicing technique was still countered by space methods, its resistance had greatly increased, and it could last for a longer time. The space-time splicing force, carrying the high-energy explosive bombs, endured the World Tree base's targeting and stubbornly passed through the Lerbo space protection belt, exploding in the base group. Amidst the shocking fluctuations, dazzling energy balls lit up in the universe one after another, engulfing the entire base. At the same time, in the temporary base of the Black Star Corps, white light flashed, and the army players who acted as the Suicide Squad revived in their bound stronghold. Mad Blade opened the interface and looked at the mission that had become completed. He smiled like a chrysanthemum blooming. I'm rich, I'm rich. After eating this wave of rewards, my level should be able to surpass the players in the first tier. I wonder if this mission is a one-time thing. I really hope to do it a few more times. Using the space-time splicing technique, the three universal civilizations could effectively attack the world trees over the horizon camps. The world tree did not have a good solution for this kind of black technology. It could only continue to carry out its original strategy and continuously destroy the anchoring orbit of the three universal civilizations. The three universal civilizations, on the other hand, kept sending people to destroy the exposed bases, and the two sides engaged in a tug-of-war. Because the space-time splicing force was not afraid of conventional attacks, the world tree reduced the over-the-horizon attacks against the incoming fleet. It did not want to expose the location of more bases for nothing. Making use of this, the three universal civilizations secretly sent out a wave of normal fleets led by high-level combatants to mix in with the space-time splicing force and successfully break through a base. They seized a set of Lurbo space protection belt equipment and hurriedly transported it back to the main base for analysis. In the huge Frontline Research Institute, the Lurbo space protection belt generator was suspended in a vacuum bubble. A large number of mechanical probes were inserted into the structure of the device, constantly detecting the parameters and deducing the principles. Countless technicians were busy in front of different instruments. Simon and the other senior officers were also paying attention to the analysis progress of the Research Institute. The remote projection stood on the ground and looked up at the Lurbo space protection belt in the air. They were excited. Originally, it was just an attempt. I didn't expect to really seize this device. The expedition team was almost wiped out. If we can analyze this technology, not only will we be able to deal with the enemy's over-the-horizon attacks, our intercepting circle will also be more difficult to break through. Just as the group was rejoicing, the lights of the Research Institute suddenly turned into a dazzling blood-red color, and a buzzing alarm sounded. Alert! Alert! Unknown data has been detected trying to sneak into the firewall. The technicians present trembled and quickly checked the source of the problem. What happened? Simon's expression changed. Reporting, this device, seized by the Frontline, seems to carry some kind of extremely latent data virus. It is invading the firewall on its own, trying to search for information from our database. The research team leader hurriedly replied, "Where's the hidden danger inspection report? Why didn't we find this virus beforehand?" Simon asked. All the tests were passed. It can only be explained that this unknown virus escaped our detection. The research team leader gritted his teeth. At this moment, the frequency of the alarm increased again. Many technicians were sweating profusely as they shouted, "The level 1 firewall has been breached. The level 2 firewall has been breached. Too fast. The invasion speed of this virus is too fast. Requesting immediate mobilization of the main artificial intelligence computing power to suppress it." Simon hurriedly leaned in front of the technician's screen to take a look. He saw that this unknown virus was like a hot knife through butter, breaking through layers of firewall shells, and was about to officially enter the quantum network on the surface of the intercepting circle base group. However, at this moment, silver streams of data suddenly appeared, instantly wrapping around this unknown virus. It was like white blood cells swallowing the virus. No matter how hard it tried, it could not escape the seal of the silver data, and its speed instantly slowed down. A large amount of silver data streams appeared again, condensing into Madison's virtual figure with a calm expression. The Mecha Empire. Simon's eyes lit up. I sense fluctuations in the network. Looks like there's a problem here. Is this the World Trees virus? Madison reached out and grabbed this struggling, unknown virus in his hand, carefully sizing it up. Seeing this, Simon immediately asked, "How's the situation?" "This thing is a virus-type artificial intelligence, not pure data," Madison replied calmly. At this moment, this unknown virus suddenly exploded and disappeared. The alarm of the research institute immediately stopped, and the lights returned to normal. You destroyed it. Simon was stunned. No, it realized that it couldn't break through my seal, so it decomposed itself. If I'm not wrong, this artificial intelligence life is a member of the World Tree and can also enjoy the revival of the World Tree. It has an innate advantage in the quantum network, and most firewalls can't stop it. Manison narrowed his eyes. I see. Simon pondered for a few seconds before relaxing. Fortunately, we have you this time. Otherwise, even if we could eliminate it, some information would have been leaked. If the three universal civilizations mobilized more of their main artificial intelligence computing power, they could also eliminate this artificial intelligence life. But they were a step too slow. If not for Manison's high-speed reaction, the enemy's artificial intelligence virus might have invaded the quantum network and allowed the World Tree to know a portion of their information through information sharing. Due to the disadvantage in intelligence, the World Tree had used more methods to gather information about the three universal civilizations. Naturally, information warfare was inevitable. Black Star isn't here. Leave this to me. Manison replied calmly and deactivated the virtual figure. Hearing this, Simon heaved a sigh of relief. Although when the strongest mechanic in the galaxy was mentioned, the first person everyone thought of was Black Star, causing the existence of the Mecha Empire to decrease. However, he could not underestimate the Mecha Empire just because of Black Star's strength. After all, he was at the peak of the previous generation of mechanics, and his standard was still there. Putting aside the conflict of ideals, Simon still believed in the Mecha Empire's ability. Although they had temporarily lost Black Star's help, with the foundation that Han Shao had laid, the three universal civilizations were still fighting the World Tree. Both sides used all kinds of universal treasures and special technologies to restrain each other. For the time being, they could not do anything to each other. The World Tree would occasionally send out some foreign experts that it had devoured to test the waters. Due to Black Star's existence, the World Tree had already turned the foreign experts into cannon fodder. Since they could not be of any use on the battlefield, they might as well use them to harass and exhaust them. However, because Han Shao had entered the sanctum, the foreign experts of the World Tree did not receive the virtual purification treatment and could only be killed by the Beyond Grade as of the explored universe. However, even without Black Star, the Beyond Grade as were still able to hold their own and did not cause any trouble. The two sides fought back and forth while silently brewing. The intensity was maintained at a relatively low level. This stalemate lasted for about 2 months before Han Shao returned from the sanctum. Chapter 1367. In the vast starry sky, a golden spark suddenly flashed and quickly expanded into a golden vortex, spitting out Han Shao. Then, the sanctum passage disappeared on its own. Han Shao quickly came back to his senses. Although it's only my second time experiencing it, this feeling is quite amazing, Han Shao muttered and adjusted his thoughts with ease. He looked down and saw that the sanctum mark had disappeared and the interface could be opened again. A notification popped up that he had entered the first sanctum. Every time he entered a different sanctum, his authority would increase. He had calculated when he entered, which was why his authority in the first sanctum had reached level 8. After sorting out his thoughts, Han Shao stored the technical information of the first sanctum in his memory palace. He then took out his communicator and looked at it. His eyes lit up. The last time I entered the third sanctum, it was more than 3 months. This time, it's only been about 2 months. The higher the authority, the more the flow of time will converge. In such a short time, there shouldn't be any problems with the war, right? Han Xiaoxin immediately dialed Simon's number. After 2 rings, the call was picked up. Simon's figure appeared on the screen with a look of surprise in his eyes. Your Excellency Black Star, you're finally back. This hopeful tone sounded like the reaction of someone who had met their savior when they were in a predicament. Could it be that something bad had happened? Could it be that I have to turn the tide? It can't be so coincidental, right? Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat, and a bunch of thoughts flashed through his mind. He asked tentatively. I've only disappeared for about 2 months. Did something happen on your side? Although there are some changes, we can still handle it. Through the screen, Simon did not feel Han Zhao's mentality. He smiled and said, now that you're back, we're even more confident. After hearing Simon's explanation, Han Zhao knew that he had misunderstood. His teammates were still quite strong, and the impact of missing him for a few months was not big. He was mainly relieved that he had found his backbone and could finally continue to rely on him. That's right, with the foundation from before, the 3 universal civilizations would not be so weak. I'm thinking too much. After hearing about the current situation, Han Zhao rubbed his chin and pondered. That's why the World Tree has built a supervisual range barracks and is shooting at us. The construction of the interception circle and the space anchor orbit is facing huge resistance. If we want to destroy the other party strategy, we have to start with positioning, right? That's the situation, but we're currently in a passive position. We can only reverse lock when the enemy fires, and other conventional detection methods are basically blocked. Simon explained. The World Tree chose to build a camp at a further jump point, away from our coverage area. It's indeed not easy. You can't do anything either? Although Simon didn't have much hope, seeing that the always confident Black Star didn't seem to have a clue, he couldn't help but feel discouraged. Because Han Zhao had always been very reliable, he had already established a know-it-all halo in the hearts of the 3 universal civilizations officers. If they encountered a problem that they could not solve, although they would not react rationally, they would more or less feel a little frustrated emotionally, which was human nature. I'm not sure yet. Let me go and take a look at the situation. Han Zhao did not give a definite answer. Regarding the situation that Simon had mentioned, his brain was working rapidly, screening one plan after another and looking for any technology that could be used in this regard. Needless to say, in the information brought out from the first sanctum this time, there was indeed a special detection technology suitable for this situation. It came from an advanced civilization of another iteration, and it was specially used for over-the-horizon battles where the enemy's coordinates were unknown. According to the data, the strength of this civilization was their over-the-horizon combat. Without the use of fast wormholes and stargates, they could even cross several star fields to launch precise over-the-horizon attacks on moving targets. Their range was extremely wide, and they were very sharp. There were countless mechanical technologies stored in the first sanctum. He had only dug out a small portion of them this time, but it was already an extremely huge technological treasure. It was not that he liked the new and disliked the old, but in terms of comprehensiveness, he was indeed miles ahead of Jay's treasure. The experience and accumulation of multiple iterations allowed them to deal with all kinds of situations, and they had targeted solutions to many tactical strategies. This was an advantage that Jay's treasure could not provide. Originally, the World Tree civilization had devoured the accumulation of multiple civilizations, so they had a certain advantage on the battlefield. This wave of information was enough to fill the gap between the two sides and even gain an advantage. To the current 3 universal civilizations, this wave of technical information was like coal in the snow, a priceless treasure. This way, even if the World Tree's revival mechanism and resource conversion were almost unsolvable, the 3 universal civilizations would be able to last longer and buy more time for the secondary dimension expedition team. With this batch of technical information, our chances of fighting against the World Tree civilization will be greater. It's a pity that none of the iterations have encountered an opponent like the World Tree. Otherwise, it would have been great to have a targeted device. Han Zhao was secretly overjoyed, but at the same time, he felt a little regretful. After this trip to the sanctums, he had made a new discovery. The information stored in each sanctum was different. The first sanctum was mainly mechanical, but he did not find information form technology. If the 5 superclasses each corresponded to a sanctum, he guessed that the extra 6th sanctum might be storing information related to information form technology. This was the best weapon to counter the World Tree. However, the key to the 6th sanctum was too difficult to synthesize and it was not on the same level as the other 5 sanctums. Han Xiao had never even heard of some of the materials. Just as he was thinking, Simon spoke again with a curious tone. Did your sanctum revival succeed? There's still one last step. I need to gather the other beyond grade as to hold the fort to prevent any trouble. Han Xiao nodded and replied. He could not help but think of the World Tree's revival. According to his experience in his previous life, most of the World Tree experts' resurrection speed ranged from 2 to 8 months. They were divided into different intervals according to their strength level. The resurrection time of a peak beyond grade usually fluctuated randomly between 5 to 8 months, and it was different every time. The resurrection time of a Tree King was not within this standard. That's good. Come to the main base. I'll gather everyone and wait for you. Simon was overjoyed. I'll go later. Han Xiao hung up the communication and dialed Oathkeeper's number. This time, it rang for a full 30 seconds before the call was reluctantly picked up. You're back. Oathkeeper appeared on the screen expressionlessly. Why don't you look happy at all? I'm very happy. This sentence, coupled with your dead fish face and sharp tone, is not convincing at all. Han Xiaoxin cursed in his heart and said helplessly, All right, I'm fine. I'm just informing you that I'm back. There are many direct descendants of civilizations among the targets of the revival this time, so I can't send them to the Holy Covenant. Oh, if you have nothing else to say, I'll hang up. The corner of Han Zhao's mouth twitched. He ended the communication, changed into the king, and disappeared. On the other side, in the Holy Covenant base, Oathkeeper, who was sitting in front of the card table, put down the communicator. He turned his head and saw the members of the Holy Covenant organization in the activity room staring at him with burning eyes. Black Star is back. Finally, another group of people is going to be revived. There might be my enemies among them. Haha, these people can't join the Holy Covenant. If they participate in the battle, does that mean we don't have to come out? Let those direct descendants die on the battlefield, and our revenge will be indirectly avenged. Black Star is amazing. In the room, many of the revivers reacted intensely. They threw down the cards in their hands, and the atmosphere was elated. Seeing this, Oathkeeper's hand tightened slightly, and his heart was filled with jealousy. The boss's experience card had expired again. In the combat conference room of the Interceptor Circle's main base, everyone gathered around the throne. A light flashed, and Han Xiao, who was wearing the king, teleported over. The president is back. Army Commander, Your Excellency Black Star. As soon as they saw Han Xiao, everyone greeted him. Thank you for your hard work while I was away. Han Xiao put away the king and waved his hands with a smile. This was the style of a leader, and everyone present was used to it. When will we complete the Sanctum Revival? Simon walked up and asked. Hearing this, most of the Beyond Grade as also looked at Han Xiao curiously. Most of them only knew about the existence of the Sanctum Revival, but they had never seen how it was carried out. They were very interested. There's no rush. Let me take a look at the current situation first. Han Xiao shook his head and went straight to the command platform. He pulled up the overall surveillance and the battle reports of the past few days and quickly browsed through them. Seeing this, no one rushed him and followed behind him, not disturbing Han Xiao from observing the situation. However, this scene gave many people a strange feeling. For some reason, they felt like their work was being reviewed by their leader. After looking at it for a while, Han Xiao looked away and said to Simon, I understand the situation now. I'm already clear about the situation. I have a way that might be able to counter the World Tree strategy. You really have a way? Simon was stunned. Just now, you said that you weren't confident, but now that you've seen the specific situation, you've already thought of a countermeasure. So quickly? I have a special detection technology that might be able to solve the problem of positioning. Han Xiao derived the technical information from his memories, hid the technical details, and gave the general principle and effect to the group. Simon quickly finished reading the information, and his expression became more and more surprised. If this technology is real, not only can it break the current tug-of-war, but can also change the direction of our future decisions. This can bring more new tactics and expand our tactical combination library. The Beyond grade as also took a look at the introduction of the technology. The mechanics were shocked and could not help but size up Han Xiao in surprise. Compared to the others, the experts were even more shocked. One look, and they could tell that as long as they followed the blueprint, it would definitely be a universal treasure-level device. Just this technology alone was enough to change the way an advanced civilization fought. Not only did Black Star's combat strength improve rapidly, but even his research had reached this level. When did he develop such a strategic observation technique? Han Xiao looked around and nodded. Of course it's real. I can share a portion of the technology and let the military factories of the three universal civilizations build the framework. I'll be in charge of the core, dividing the work and increasing efficiency. He did not plan to hide a portion of the technology that would be helpful to the battle. He only controlled the core technology, and the three universal civilizations would provide the resources to build the other aspects, increasing the capital of the three universal civilizations to fight against the World Tree. Good. As expected of this special consultant. I'll ask the three leaders later. Simon immediately perked up. Black Star had just returned, and he had already proposed a solution to the problem that had troubled them for 2 months. Not only was he unique in terms of intelligence, but he also had some achievements in terms of strategic technology. Black Star was indeed as reliable as ever. Looking at everyone's surprised expressions, Han Xiao was calm and did not take credit for it. Strictly speaking, this was not his own ability, but the strength of the advanced civilizations of the various iterations. He was only standing on the shoulders of the giants and grasping the information gap. He had nothing to be proud of. Putting away his thoughts, Han Xiao waved his hand and said with a solemn tone, "Let's put this aside for now. Choose a place for me to use the Sanctum Revival. This time, it's different from before. If we ask this batch of revivers to participate in the battle, there will definitely be many people who won't accept it. I don't want any accidents. I'll be on grade as follow me." Okay. Everyone's expression turned serious as they agreed. Chapter 1368. On a certain artificially modified planet in the flickering world, the silver land paved with engineering alloys was boundless, wrapping around the entire planet. There were no buildings built on the ground, and the entire planet was a round silver sphere. Only the most basic geological modification had been done. Hundreds of Beyond Grade had stayed in the center of the vast silver plain. Their eyes were always focused on Han Zhao's back. In order to reduce unexpected factors, the three universal civilizations chose a planet in their territory as the venue for the Sanctum Revival. Many Beyond Grade, as followed Han Xiao over using the teleportation device. The three universal civilizations did not set up a fleet in the outer space of the planet. They only installed space stabilization anchors and deployed secret over-the-horizon weapons in more distant locations. They used remote equipment to observe the situation here, so the outer space of the planet looked empty without any armed forces. This was based on Han Zhao's suggestion. All Beyond Grade as had a temper. If they were forced to negotiate as soon as they woke up, they would definitely be unhappy, and it might not be beneficial to contact them. This time, the three universal civilizations had a favor to ask of others. The other party was all historical powerhouses with respectable identities, so it was not suitable for them to show such a tough attitude from the start. On the contrary, the communication between Beyond Grade as was not hindered. If physical persuasion was needed, he and a group of Beyond Grade as would be enough. Only the strong would be respected. This was the default rule between Beyond Grade as. If military forces were to intervene, it might have the opposite effect. Then I'll begin. Han Xiao looked back. Seeing that everyone nodded, indicating that they had no objections, he retracted his gaze and activated the Sanctum Revival mark on the back of his hand. A golden light suddenly bloomed and shot out like a thread, condensing into glowing bodies on the plain in front of everyone. They slowly materialized and turned into life forms with different appearances. The energy fluctuations resonated with each other, as if a storm had appeared out of thin air, blowing everyone's hair and clothes. The Beyond Grade stared at this scene, afraid that they would miss a single scene. They're alive. So this is how they're revived. It's different from what I thought. I thought there would be some kind of incubation process. Speaking of which, what's the principle behind this? It looks amazing. A series of surprised whispers came from behind, but Han Xiao pretended not to hear them and carefully observed this batch of reviving targets. The direct descendants of the three universal civilizations, the direct descendants of the supercluster, and the neutral Beyond Grade, as the structure of the revivers this time is more complicated than the previous two times, and the conflict is probably more intense. Han Xiao mentally prepared himself. At this moment, the revivers seemed to have woken up from a dream. They went from being dazed to confused, and then from being confused to surprised. They observed their own condition and their surroundings in bewilderment and started sizing each other up. What's going on? Hallucination? Dreamland? Virtual world? What did the Radiant Federation do to me? It's you. I crush your head with my own hands. How are you still alive? After this batch of revivers saw the situation around them clearly, the scene gradually became chaotic. Waves of aura emerged from their bodies, and their energy quickly entered an unstable active state. They entered battle mode, and many people who had grudges with each other were ready to make a move. As for some of the neutrals who had yet to figure out the situation, they frowned and quietly retreated to the side. Their visual organs spun around, wanting to observe first. Han Xiao was about to speak to show his existence, but at this moment, a tall male life form looked over and stared at Han Xiao and the others. He slowly said, "If I'm not wrong, we're all dead. Were you the ones who revived us?" He was wearing a gorgeous priest's robe, and his voice was solemn and ancient. With a calming aura, he quickly suppressed the chaos in the crowd and guided the gazes of all the revivers to focus on him. Then, they followed his gaze and locked on Han Xiao and the others. "You're stealing my lines?" Han Xiao looked at him carefully and filtered through the database with his consciousness. Very soon, he found the information of this man who spoke. Hilbert Mueller, a direct descendant of the Arcane Church, a peak beyond Grade A Esper. His ability was related to space, and he was once the supreme pillar of the Arcane Church. He was even more senior and was the previous owner of the ethereal national treasure, Wernos, because Wernos' ability was more suitable for the ethereal national treasure. After Wernos grew up, the Arcane Church changed the owner of the national treasure. Hilbert left his position as the supreme pillar and changed his position to explore the secondary dimensions. He disappeared during a long voyage, and no one knew if he was alive or dead. From the looks of it, this guy had naturally kicked the bucket. The universe was so big, and there were endless dangers. No one knew what he had encountered in the secondary dimensions, but the possibility of it being the Celestial Star Alliance could be ruled out. Han Xiao had once learned the appearances and names of the first 3 batches of outsiders from Jays. Those people were not in his revival choices for the time being. Various thoughts flashed through Han Xiaoxin's mind, and he nodded. "That's right. I'm sure you still have your memories. You've all died long ago and become history. It's now Galaxy Calendar Year 783, and many years have passed. I used a method called Sanctum Revival to wake you up. It's actually revival. Unbelievable. There's such a thing? I thought someone had uploaded my remnant consciousness into the virtual world." The revivers quietened down and were surprised. They had never thought of such a thing. At least, when they died, not many of them thought that they would wake up one day. At this time, a female dynasty human in military uniform narrowed her eyes and asked Han Xiao, "Who are you?" "Then who are you?" "You can call me Black Star, the current only controller of the Sanctum Revival, the joint consultant of the 3 universal civilizations, and the current Beyond Grade A president." Han Xiao introduced himself and added with a smile, "I was once an ally of the dynasty. Speaking of which, we should be closer, Your Excellency Reeve." "Is that so? Then you're one of us?" Reeve's expression softened slightly. She was once one of the pillars of the dynasty, a peak beyond grade A mage, nicknamed the Fairy Empress, and her combat strength was outstanding. Hearing Han Zhao's title, it sounded like he was on the same side as the three universal civilizations, and, at the same time, the other party claimed to be an ally of the dynasty. Reeve felt that he was most likely not an enemy. She turned to observe the beyond grade as behind Han Zhao. Suddenly, her gaze stopped on Claudia, and a surprised smile appeared on her face. "Isn't this little dark? You're still alive?" Everyone looked over and saw the usually cold Claudia's face twitching slightly. He quietly moved his feet as if he wanted to hide himself in the crowd. "Hey, Claudia, don't pretend you don't know me. I see you. Where are you hiding?" Reeve put her hands on her hips and roared like a lion. Han Zhao could not help but rub his buzzing ears. He felt that this woman must have a lot in common with Sun Hunter. "We meet again." A rare look of reluctance flashed across Claudia's face, but he still braced himself and replied. In terms of seniority, Reeve was his senior. She had once taught him with the other national pillars for a period of time. When Claudia was not strong yet, she had left a deep psychological shadow in him. She could be considered half a teacher. What made Claudia's scowl go numb the most was that Reeve would usually touch him and deliberately tease him. Speaking of which, Reeve could be considered a flirtatious beauty. If it was under normal circumstances, he would not have avoided her, but the problem was this guy was an acquired transsexual. It was not a situation where she was forced to do so like Lotus Swordsman, but a choice of her own accord. Furthermore, it was not a decision made when she was weak. She actually changed her sex after becoming a beyond grade A. The reason was strange. In Reeve's words, "I'm tired of being a man, so I'll try being a woman." Although the galactic era was open and transsexualism was widely accepted, Claudia had never liked new trends. He could accept it if they interacted normally, but when he was teased, he instinctively felt a chill run down his spine. He really could not accept it. This mentality was probably, "I treat you as a brother, and you actually want to sleep with me?" Ahem, everyone, now is not the time to exchange pleasantries. Han Zhao hurriedly interrupted the conversation between the two of them. They had not finished talking about serious matters. If he let these people who were related to each other recognize each other now, how long would they have to talk? That's true. Let's not talk about anything else first. You must have revived us for some purpose. What's going on? The reviver of the Radiant Federation also spoke at the right time. This was a psychic, a direct descendant of Ulu. The ones who asked the questions were basically the direct descendants of the three universal civilizations. They spontaneously gathered together, while the other revivers watched the two sides communicate and silently obtained information. As for the 10 supercluster direct descendants, they shrank to the side and maintained an extremely high level of vigilance. Hearing this question, everyone was energized. This was what they were most vigilant about, afraid that they would be revived for some bad intentions. Reviving everyone is not just my intention. It is also the intention of the three universal civilizations, the Galactic Society, and all the beyond grade is present. Han Zhao paused for a moment before saying with a deep voice, "Everyone's hometown has encountered a huge crisis. An external universal civilization is invading our world. Their strength is beyond imagination, and they're extremely powerful. The war has already broken out. We need everyone's strength." A universe-level war? Everyone's expressions changed, and they all had their own thoughts. That was true. If it was not a crisis of this level, there did not seem to be a need to spend so much effort to revive so many historical beyond grade as. However, from a personal point of view, knowing that they would have to participate in a high-intensity galactic war as soon as they were revived, most of the revivers were unhappy that they had been used. The revivers looked at the hundreds of beyond grade as on the other side and finally understood the situation. The joy of being revived was swept away, and a faint anger arose in their hearts. A neutral beyond grade A frowned and said with dissatisfaction, "If we're not willing, what will happen? Will you use force to force us?" Han Zhao shook his head and said, "That's not the case. We will try our best to persuade everyone." Everything is voluntary, and we will not force you to participate in the war. After all, the revivers were individuals with free thoughts, not slaves. Coercion was not advisable, not only because of the complicated identities of the revivers, but also because of the feelings of the other beyond grade as. Pointing a gun at the revivers' heads and forcing them to compromise would cause many repercussions. One of them was to make the other beyond grade as feel the same way and worry that they would receive the same treatment after reviving in the future. Then, it would be hard to say how many association members would be willing to continue participating in the war. However, there would definitely not be many revivers who would listen to him if he only used words to persuade them, and force was an indispensable part. It was difficult to deal with both sides, and this was even more difficult to deal with than the previous two revivals. Han Xiao had long been mentally prepared for this. This time, a beyond grade A with a medium build spoke with a deep voice. We want to ask for the opinions of the upper echelons. Can you give us a communicator? Han Xiao glanced at him and recognized that this was a direct descendant valued by the supercluster. His name was Mablo, and he was very strong. Unfortunately, he had died in the tragedy of the Pinnacles. Sure, take it. Han Xiao did not reject this request. He took out a communicator and threw it to Mablo. This was the condition of his deal with the supercluster. With the rich experience of the supercluster, they would definitely suspect that the three universal civilizations had secretly done something to their high-level combatants during the war. They would definitely not allow the strong who had finally revived to participate in the war. Han Xiao did not expect all of the revived direct descendants of the supercluster to participate in the war. Mablo took the communicator, nodded slightly, and led the other 9 direct descendants of the supercluster to the side to contact the upper echelons. For a moment, all the revivers fell silent. The acquaintances exchanged glances and hesitated to speak. This time, Reeve exhaled and slowly said, "Since the dynasty is in trouble, I will not shirk my duty. Isn't it just a war? As long as the dynasty gives the order, I am willing to contribute my strength." "Me too. I'm already a dead man. Since the Federation needs my strength to fight against foreign enemies, there's no harm in burning it again." With Reeve taking the lead, many of the direct descendants of the three universal civilizations expressed their support. Seeing this, Han Xiaoxin heaved a sigh of relief. The support of most of the direct descendants of the civilizations was within his expectations. The high-level combatants, who had been educated by the three universal civilizations for a long time, were naturally reliable, and they were willing to contribute their strength to the explored universe. However, when it came to Second Life, things obviously would not go so smoothly. When many of the direct descendants expressed their stance, a voice of dissent appeared in the crowd. "Blackstar, I'm sorry, but we don't want to continue participating in the war." Han Xiao and the others looked in the direction of the voice, and their expressions changed. The reviver who spoke was not a historical powerhouse, but an association member who had died on the battlefield not long ago. His name was Garose, and he had a short interaction with Han Xiao. The other association members who had died in battle also followed beside Garose. Clearly, they had reached a consensus and mustered up their courage to look at Han Xiao. As expected, even the beyond grade, as who were willing to participate in the war, did not want to take the risk after dying once. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. Although he was not surprised, he still shook his head and sighed. However, before he could respond, another reviver objected. "I'm sorry, but I don't plan to participate in this war either." Han Xiao turned around, and his expression changed. The person who spoke was Hilbert, the first direct descendant of the three universal civilizations who refused to respond to the recruitment. Reeve looked at him in surprise. Before she could finish, Hilbert waved his hand and interrupted her. He said calmly, "Don't worry. I've already sacrificed my life for the three universal civilizations and fulfilled my duty. I've done them justice. Even if I'm a direct descendant, Ethereal can't ask me to contribute endlessly. Even the upper echelons have the choice to retire. Furthermore, I've died once, and everything is reset. It's not easy for me to have a second chance. I can't work for them forever." As soon as he said that, many of the direct descendants of the civilizations who were still conflicted were stunned. They felt that what he said hit the nail on the head and could not help but nod in agreement. Even the direct descendants of the civilizations who had already expressed their stance were shaken by these words. The direct descendants of the three universal civilizations originally wanted to persuade them, but when they heard this, they were speechless. This doesn't seem good. Seeing this, the leaders of the three universal civilizations who were remotely monitoring the situation felt their hearts tighten. Chapter 1369. This guy, looking at the broadcast on the virtual screen, the ethereal Pope's eyes darkened. Most of the direct descendants of the civilizations were hardcore. From the perspective of the leaders of the three universal civilizations, reviving the direct descendants was naturally to let them continue to serve. They wished they could have the eternal loyalty of the direct descendants. However, people's hearts would change, especially after experiencing death. Even the direct descendants could not avoid it. After sacrificing a precious life for the civilization, they felt that they were even and did not want to be controlled anymore. Hilbert's thoughts were human nature to the three of them, but understanding was one thing. It was not in line with their current interests. If it were during peacetime, the three of them would not mind the other party's idea of retiring. They would even give him a title of merit to show the honor of Hilbert's past service to the civilization and increase the loyalty of the other direct descendants. However, the situation was different now, and Black Star had agreed to the terms of the revival. The three of them were in a difficult position. After Hilbert finished his speech, the atmosphere in the venue fell into silence again. Hilbert looked around, then looked at Han Xiao and asked, "What do you think?" Han Xiao did not respond immediately. Instead, he turned to look at Kasuyi with a meaningful gaze. Kasuyi was stunned. Why are you looking at me?" "Nothing, just looking." Han Xiao looked away. TSK. The Arcane Church is indeed full of traitors. Although Hilbert's personal request was not considered a traitor, it affected the mentality of the other revivers. In the eyes of the leaders of the three universal civilizations, he was probably no different from a traitor. All sorts of thoughts flashed through Han Xiao's mind. He smiled and nodded. "Your request is reasonable. Indeed, no one stipulated that you have to work for the civilization forever after becoming a direct descendant. Even ordinary people have a chance to retire. A meritorious person like you who died for the civilization naturally has such a right. So you have no objections?" Hilbert raised his eyebrows. "I personally understand, but this matter is not up to me. The three universal civilizations bought the slots for the Sanctum Revival from me. So far, they have only paid the deposit. If the three universal civilizations want to reduce the slots, I can take it back." Han Xiao spread his hands and continued. "During war, every resource has to be used. If you can't show your usefulness, I don't think they'll be willing to pay. If that's the case, then take my life back." Hilbert opened his arms with a calm expression, as if he was at the mercy of others. Seeing this, everyone had complicated feelings. They glanced at Han Xiao and Hilbert. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. He knew what was going on. Was this guy really willing to give up his second chance at life? That was obviously impossible. This was just a retreat in order to advance. He was certain that the three universal civilizations would not kill him. Otherwise, it would be no different from a coercive threat in the eyes of the other revivers. This went against his original intention, causing more beyond grade as to feel sad and shaken. It would further damage the loyalty of some of the direct members, making them feel like they were forever enslaved. Just as Han Xiao was about to speak, he suddenly received a message from the leaders of the three universal civilizations. You can rest assured now. The three universal civilizations just said that they will still pay the full cost of your revival and will not take your life back." The three universal civilizations reacted quickly. Unwilling to damage the loyalty of more direct members, they had to make a stand. "That's good." Hilbert put down his arm without changing his expression, as if he had expected this. Then, He turned around and pointed at some of the revivers who had agreed with him earlier. Since you didn't reject our request and won't force us to participate in the battle, we should be able to leave, right? Han Xiao smiled and slowly said, You misunderstood. You can't leave on your own. You can only follow us. Hearing this, the expressions of the revivers changed slightly. Hilbert narrowed his eyes. You mean to put us under house arrest? You can understand it that way. All of you have been dead for a long time and have just been revived. You don't know much about the current galactic society. At the same time, the structure of your forces is rather complicated. Because the current war situation is tense, in order to reduce unexpected factors, we will implement unified management. Before getting permission, no one can move freely. Han Zhao's expression did not change, but his tone was unquestionable. This was a plan that had been decided long ago. Even if he did not force all of these revivers to participate in the battle, he would not let them move freely. Otherwise, there would be no need for him to bring so many beyond grade as over. This time, Garose and the others could not help but speak. Same for us. Han Xiao glanced at them and said expressionlessly, You guys died in battle to fight against the World Tree. Naturally, you don't need to accept such treatment. Stand over here. In fact, he did not want to let these people go either, but he had to take into account the mentality of the association members behind him. Differential treatment was still necessary. In his current position, he had no choice but to mediate and balance the thoughts of all parties. It was normal for people to seek benefits and avoid harm. It was impossible to make people of different positions give up on fighting for their own interests with just a shake of the tiger body. Garose and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Under the gazes of both sides, they left the position of the revivers and stood among the beyond grade as behind Han Xiao. As long as they obtained the benefits they wanted, they naturally had no intention of continuing to stand on the same side as these revivers. The beyond grade as glanced at Garose. Naturally, they did not have any intention of looking down on him. Most of them felt that it was only right. Hilbert did not speak, but the neutral revivers were not going to do it. How long will the house arrest last? A dark golden-skinned reviver asked with a deep voice. His aura was even more oppressive than Hilbert's. Everyone looked over, and the hearts of the mechanics skipped a beat. Nilfgaard, the first divine throne mechanic in history, the founder of the machinery faith. All the mechanics who had the bonuses of the machinery faith were enjoying his protection. To the beyond grade A mechanics, he was like a grandmaster. Han Xiao nodded and explained, Your Excellency, Nilfgaard, your house arrest will not last long. Everything will be based on the specific situation. We will conduct a long-term, one-on-one review of everyone. Only when we are sure that there will be no unexpected factors will you be allowed to leave. Hearing this, another neutral beyond grade A spoke and sneered. The standards of the review will be set by you guys. You can say whatever you want. I'm very curious. Will we be under house arrest forever if we don't agree to participate in the battle? Han Xiao turned around and looked over. The person who spoke was called Aegon Vardnads, nicknamed Flowing Flame. He was a peak beyond grade A and a transformation type Esper from the same era as Dylan. He was also a big shot who could summon the wind and summon the rain. He had died in the tragedy of the Pinnacles. At this moment, he was looking at Han Xiao and the others with undisguised hostility. This time, a bunch of ferocious people had been revived. There were many strong people in the crowd, and there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons everywhere. Of course not. Han Xiao casually replied as a thought flashed through his mind. The direct descendants of the three universal civilizations, the direct descendants of the supercluster, and the beyond grade as whose deaths had nothing to do with the three universal civilizations. Even if these people were unwilling to participate in the battle, they would not do anything extreme. However, those who died in the hands of the three universal civilizations or in the tragedy of the Pinnacles were completely different. They had deep hatred, and this was the difficult thorn to deal with. Aegon Vardnads coldly glanced at Hilbert and the other revived direct descendants and said indifferently, You took a fee to revive these direct descendants, but you revived us neutral beyond grade as voluntarily, right? You can put it that way. Han Xiao nodded. I I thank you for reviving me, and I owe you a favor. However, if you want to use this favor to hold me hostage to fight against the enemies of the three universal civilizations, impossible. Aegon Vardnadz stood with his arms crossed, and a red flame-like stream of light swam around his body. The temperature of the field soared rapidly, and his tone was firm. I'm telling you clearly, I will never accept the house arrest of the three universal civilizations. This is jail. They will never let us, the victims of the tragedy of the Pinnacles, go. I'm leaving now. Who wants to leave with me? Rumble. As soon as he said that, many of the beyond grades who died in the tragedy of the Pinnacles also stood up, wanting to use the power of the crowd to leave this place. A huge energy wave spread out, and the alloy ground buzzed and shook. Dents appeared one after another. The direct descendants of the three universal civilizations, the direct descendants of the supercluster, and some of the neutral beyond grade, as who did not intend to make a move, immediately retreated to the side, not intending to help either side. They made up their minds to watch the show and act according to the situation. The direct descendants of the supercluster who retreated to the side secretly communicated telepathically. We're not going to make a move. This is a good opportunity to break out. I just contacted the upper echelons. They told us not to act rashly and to listen to their arrangements for the time being. Mablo paused for a moment, stared at Han Xiao, sized him up in surprise, and added, also, the upper echelon specifically told me not to join in the fun and provoke that guy called Blackstar, or I'll die. At the same time, the auras of Aegon Vardnadz and the others quickly rose, and the atmosphere became tense. Seeing this, Han Zhao's smile gradually disappeared, and he slowly said, we won't force you to participate in the battle, but being grounded is a must. This is non-negotiable. All of you are seniors with status. I don't want to use force, but if you make things difficult for me, I can only let you suffer a little. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. With that, the beyond grade as behind him spread out, forming a semicircle around Aegon Vardnadz and the others. Humph, that's more like it. Aegon Vardnadz's aura surged as he shouted, you want to solve the problem with just words? You're dreaming. Either step back obediently, or use your fist to make me admit defeat. This is the rule between beyond grade as. If you want to stop me, try it. Bang! Raging flames spurted out. With energy as fuel, it seemed like it would never be extinguished, and the alloy on the ground instantly melted. Aegon Vardnadz's body instantly changed, and his body expanded, turning into a strange giant-like creature. It was as if he had broken out of his skin from the inside out. His appearance was like a demon that had walked out of hell, as described by some religions, and his entire body was wrapped in inextinguishable flowing flames. The next moment, his four long legs suddenly stomped on the ground, and his entire body shot toward the outer space of the planet. Like a fiery meteor rising from the ground, he was extremely fast, trying to break through the encirclement. This was a signal. The many revivers who stood out with him displayed their abilities and attacked the surrounding beyond grade as. A torrent of energy erupted, instantly lifting up the chaotic battle. The ground kept shattering under the collision of the beyond grade as abilities, and almost in the blink of an eye, a sinkhole was blasted out. Looking from outer space, it looked like a planet had been smashed by an awl, shattering a part of its shell. Take them down. Han Xiao stayed where he was and waved his hand, watching a portion of his companions take action. Although there were a few powerful people among this group of breakthroughs, Kukezi and Old Manison were not to be trifled with. With the help of Claudi, Ulu, and many other direct descendants, it was enough to suppress Aegon Vardnadz and the others. There was no need for him to personally take action. As expected, as soon as Aegon Vardnadz rushed into outer space, a huge silver mechanical deity was quickly formed. The visual effect almost covered the entire sky, looking down at the planet from outer space. It suddenly slapped down, instantly smashing Aegon Vardnadz back to the ground. Bang! The alloy ground caved in, twisted, and shattered. A ring-shaped valley was created by Aegon Vardnads, who fell like a meteor. What good Buddha's palm? Han Zhao's eyelids twitched. On the other side, light flashed in Kasui's eyes, and an endless amount of psychic power gushed out, filling every inch of space. There was almost no place to hide. The continuous mental explosions shook the movements of many people who were trying to break out of shape. The other revivers did not interfere and retreated to the edge of the battlefield. They only suffered a little psychic shockwave, but they also felt a stabbing pain in their brains. These beyond grade, as of the later generations, are not simple. Less than a third of them can stop them. I don't think they can escape. That leader, Blackstar, hasn't made a move yet. His strength shouldn't be too bad. Many of the revivers who were watching the show whispered to each other. They also took this opportunity to observe the strength of the beyond grade as of this era. They had just revived and lost their weapons. Most of them were not in their peak condition, especially the mechanics. If these beyond grade as were really strong and did not give them a chance to break out, they would tactfully accept the house arrest. Manison and Kasui led a group of association members to fight with Aegon Vardnads and the others for a while, quickly knocking down the revivers who were not in their peak condition. However, there were quite a number of opponents, and there were peak beyond grade as. Many of the association members were also injured. Aegon Vardnads, who was covered in wounds, avoided Manison's psionic cannon and collided with the desolate beast Mercer on the association's side. He took a few punches head-on and charged forward. His clawed palms slapped heavily on Mercer's chest, and the concentrated bursting flames entered Mercer's body through his skill and exploded. Boom! The flames expanded, and Mercer shot out of the smoke and fell to the ground. His momentum did not weaken as he plowed out a rift valley. Black smoke billowed from his body as if he was burnt from the inside out. He was quite injured. However, at this moment, Aurora raised her hand and shot out a wave of life energy that hit Mercer. His charred skin and flesh fell off one after another, and new flesh grew out. His injuries disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Recovery Esper ability. Aegon Vardnad's expression changed. Suddenly, with a flash of inspiration, he changed his direction and charged toward Aurora. After an intense battle, he had already realized that it was impossible to break through the encirclement. He could not break through Manison and Kasui's blockade, and he had already shown signs of giving in. However, when he saw Aurora's ability, he suddenly had an idea. Since the three universal civilizations were resisting foreign enemies, the recovery-type Esper would definitely be of great strategic importance to the high-level combatants. If he could control the recovery-type Esper and use her as a hostage to negotiate with these people, he might be able to successfully leave. Aegon Vardnads made up his mind. One last try. The moment he changed his target, the beyond grade, as on the association side, were all furious. Aurora was their pillar against the World Tree, a strategic weapon that maintained the advantage of high-level combatants. However, this guy actually wanted to put their only healer in danger in order to break out of the encirclement. Even Claudie and the other direct beyond grade, as who did not make a move, could not hold it in anymore. They turned into streams of light and charged toward Aegon Vardnads. This scene was like poking a hornet's nest. Aegon Vardnads was shocked, but not only did he not stop, he even sped up, believing that this move would work. Many of the revivers were also shocked. Just as they were about to continue watching the show, a powerful wave that shocked everyone swept out. Buzz! Han Zhao's figure appeared in front of Aegon Vardnads, as though he had teleported. The next moment, the black mechanical deity rose from the ground and said coldly, "I know you have a grudge with the three universal civilizations, so it's fine for you to vent your anger. However, you want to attack our important strategic figure? You're courting death." Han Zhao did not hesitate. He opened his palm, and a strong binding force field acted on Aegon Vardnads, temporarily freezing him in midair. Then, the soldiers that covered the sky separated from the mechanical deity and fired endlessly at Aegon Vardnads. Round after round of firepower did not stop. Aegon Vardnads was blown up until he pissed his pants. No matter how he dodged, the mechanical army chased after him and bombarded him nonstop. I surrender. Stop fighting. Aegon Vardnadz hurriedly admitted defeat, but Han Shao ignored him. The Beyond Grade, as who were rushing over, stopped in their tracks, and the many revivers who were watching the battle were also in an uproar. How could they not see that this was killing intent? Regardless of whether Aegon Vardnadz surrendered or counterattacked in despair, Han Shao ignored them all. After chasing after him for a long time, he finally bombed him to death, leaving only a broken shell that fell from the sky. The battle to break out of the encirclement had long stopped. Everyone watched as Han Shao ravaged Aegon Vardnadz to death. No matter how Aegon Vardnadz retaliated, he could not escape from Black Star's control. The difference in combat strength was completely overwhelming. It was like an adult bullying a child. Just as the revivers were surprised that Black Star had killed him, Hela reached out and grabbed Aegon Vardnadz's corpse. She pulled out a soul from it and threw it into the underworld, attracting everyone's attention. Seeing that everyone's gazes were on her, Hela did not mind and snorted. Black Star can give you a new life, but he can also take your lives. If you continue to be so shameless, I'll send all of you to the underworld. Chapter 1370. The Underworld. Upon hearing this name, the revivers were in an uproar. Because they were in a different era, their reactions were completely different. Some people knew what the underworld was and sized up Hela in shock. Some people were confused and did not know what it meant. After asking for a while, they finally understood the meaning of the underworld. Their expressions could not help but change slightly, and they felt a strong sense of fear. Nilfgaard, who had been watching the show, frowned. He looked at Hela and said in a deep voice, speaking of which, the ability of that recovery-type Esper was very familiar. What's your relationship with Nerkes and Eros? He was also a primordial one and was from the same era as the two sisters of the underworld. From the beginning, he felt that Hela and Aurora's abilities were familiar. Hela looked down at him and said calmly, the two of them died a long time ago. We inherited Dawn of Life, Power of the Dead, and the underworld they left behind. I see. Nilfgaard nodded slowly and did not say anything else. Seeing that he had no other questions, Hela ignored him and looked at everyone coldly. Black Star has already given you enough face. Don't push your luck. I'll say it again. If you don't want to live, you can continue to cause trouble. Let's see if we can send all of you to the underworld. Han Shao spoke at the right time and pretended to reprimand her. Hela, everyone here is a senior. Watch your words. Humph. Hela threw away Aegon Vardnadz's remains, turned around, and returned to the crowd, not saying another word. Hearing the two of them, some of the revivers looked embarrassed, but they did not dare to do anything extreme. The deterrence of the underworld was not small. Compared to entering the underworld, house arrest seemed to be acceptable. Furthermore, Black Star's ability to play Aegon Vardnadz in the palm of his hand and kill him made many of the revivers wary. However, although Aegon Vardnadz was killed, most of the revivers did not feel sad. They had watched the entire process and naturally knew that it was not Black Star's one-sided attack. Aegon Vardnadz had only himself to blame, so they could not blame him. As for the Beyond Grade, as on Han Zhao's side, not only did they not feel disgusted, they even felt happy. Who asked Aegon Vardnadz to be so bold as to cut the healer? Even if Black Star did not do anything, many people wanted to kill this guy. Killing people to establish his might made it easy for people to think that he was threatening the revivers. In order to prevent such repercussions, Han Shao did not want to kill anyone, but Aegon Vardnadz had courted death himself. That was a special case. It was simply wonderful that he could make both sides feel that he deserved to die. Just as he was worrying about how to establish his might, Aegon Vardnadz had presented him with an excellent opportunity, and it wouldn't cause any backlash. He was a good person who had helped him in his hour of need. He would feel bad if he didn't instruct the 8 brothers of the underworld to take care of him. Seeing that the revivers had stopped their commotion, Han Shao knew that this wave of punishment had worked and dispelled everyone's thoughts of causing trouble. However, this was not enough. His main goal was not to put them under house arrest, but to persuade these people to participate in the war voluntarily. Han Xiao took a deep breath and said, "Actually, in this war, you don't have to pay for it. In fact, inviting you all to participate in the war is not asking you to contribute for free. This is also a transaction. I believe that you will be satisfied with this price." Hearing this, the revivers looked interested. "Oh, what's the reward?" Hilbert asked curiously. Han Xiao smiled and gave them a strong dose of medicine according to the plan. "As long as you choose to participate in the war, no matter how many times you die in battle, I will wake you up again. If one day we expel the foreign enemies, the participants will always enjoy the right to the Sanctum Revival and obtain a permanent safety guarantee. However, if you don't participate in the war today, you won't have the chance to exchange for it in the future. This is my price." The revivers present were stunned for a moment before their hearts palpitated. If that was the case, then there would be no worries. Using participation in the war in exchange for the right to the Sanctum Revival forever was definitely an extremely worthwhile deal. Furthermore, there was still the current ability user of Dawn of Life, so there was a certain guarantee of survival on the battlefield. It would not be so easy to die in battle. It was worth a try. The only question was whether Black Star would keep his word. Observing everyone's reaction, Han Xiao smiled and said, "Everyone, there's no need to doubt my sincerity. The Sanctum Revival is not difficult for me. Reviving you guys is just a piece of cake." Reeve could not help but question, "You mean the Sanctum Revival can be used endlessly? Are there no restrictions?" Hee, there really isn't. Everyone, don't worry. No matter how many times you die, the Sanctum Revival can still take effect." Han Xiao replied with a smile. When he introduced the situation earlier, he did not repeat the lie that the Sanctum Revival could only be used once, so this group of revivers did not know about it. As soon as he said that, the surrounding association members could not help but look at him. Although there was no expression on their faces, they sighed in their hearts. Black Star's ability to lie through his teeth was getting better and better. Many association members believed that there was only one chance for the Sanctum Revival. They had been lying for too long and had already taken it to be true. They did not believe Han Zhao's words. In their opinion, this was just a lie that Black Star had deliberately made up to trick this group of revivers to participate in the battle. However, no one had any intention of revealing the truth, because it was in their interest to trick more revivers to participate in the battle. Furthermore, this lie was ineffective against insiders like them. This separated the difference between the current beyond grade as and the historical revivers. Many association members believed that they would not fall for it, and even if they revived, they would not fall for it. Therefore, there was a difference in treatment that would not harm their group's interests. Therefore, no one intended to expose Han Zhao's lie. Even Garose and the others who had just revived chose to remain silent. Instead, they felt that Black Star had made a good move. Seeing how tempted the revivers were, the association members chuckled in their hearts. They could not help but feel a sense of superiority, as if they had grasped the truth. At the same time, Kasuyi glanced at his companions around him. He knew that no one took him seriously, and the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. As someone who knew the truth, of course, he knew that Han Xiao was telling the truth. However, these current beyond grade as had already been fooled by Black Star, and no one believed him. Kasuyi did not know whether to laugh or cry. Forget it, it's not a big problem. When Black Star proves it with his actions, they'll know which is the truth. He was not worried that Black Star's plan would fail. The three universal civilizations and the association members would probably hide the truth out of their own interests. Many revivers had to be controlled and could not freely access information from the outside world. So the three universal civilizations would naturally screen out the information that might reveal the truth. Even if the revivers knew the truth, there were still some direct revivers who were willing to sacrifice themselves. As long as a battle broke out, a wave of people died, and the second revival was successfully carried out, everyone would understand that what he said today was true. The situation would immediately return to the right track. and they would continue to rush forward. With so many backup plans, everything is under control. Black Star is still stable, Kasui praised in his heart. On the other side, many revivers were shaken by Han Zhao's conditions and were conflicted. Hilbert's eyes flashed, and he said seriously, "If what you said is true, this deal is worth doing. I can serve the civilization again and fight against the enemies. It's fine. You have plenty of time to think about it." Han Xiao smiled nonchalantly. As he spoke, he waved his hand and unfolded a spaceship. It landed on the bumpy ground, and the hatch opened, inviting everyone aboard. The revivers had already accepted Han Zhao's words and did not express any objections. They obediently boarded the spaceship. Everyone boarded the starship and quickly set off for the multidimensional sky, opening teleportation points set up by the three universal civilizations, preparing to jump to the interception circle. The cabin was harmonious, and there were no confrontational relationships. Many of the current beyond grade as had finally established a relationship with the various revivers, and many of them had reunited after a long time. Looking at this harmonious scene, Han Xiaoxin heaved a sigh of relief. The preliminary negotiations have been completed for the time being. I've finally mobilized the enthusiasm of this group of revivers to participate in the battle. I wonder how many beyond grade as outside of the revivers believe my words. Han Xiao could not help but smirk. The war had already broken out, and the unlimited Sanctum revival would be revealed sooner or later. He had no intention of hiding it all the time. Using this reason to convince these revivers was a plan that he had made long ago, and he was not afraid of the three universal civilizations finding out. However, the previous lie was too deeply rooted in their hearts. Han Xiao believed that the three universal civilizations and the association members would most likely be skeptical of his change of words. As long as there was no actual proof, these people would be more willing to believe the lie of the Sanctum revival is only limited to one time. However, although Han Xiao planned to reveal the fact that there was no limit to the Sanctum revival, he did not want to tell the truth completely. He had already prepared an explanation for the three universal civilizations after the truth was exposed, and he had hidden a trick inside. Beep, beep, beep. While he was thinking, his communicator suddenly rang. Han Xiao took it out and saw that it was a call invitation from the leaders of the three universal civilizations. Without hesitation, he entered the quantum network and projected a remote projection. He turned around and found himself in the office of the three universal civilizations leaders, facing the three of them. "Thank you for your hard work, Black Star. These revivers have been stabilized by you." Bruce nodded. "Thank you for thinking about the big picture and bringing back so many high-level combatants. This will make up for many of our disadvantages. Don't just thank me verbally." Han Xiao chuckled. "Don't worry. We've already prepared the substantial rewards." Bruce paused for a moment before suddenly asking, "By the way, we also provided God as a medium, but why didn't he revive?" "I'm not sure. Either the medium is wrong, or this guy isn't dead and is hiding in some corner." Han Zhao's expression did not change. This kind of problem could be solved with just a push, and it did not affect him at all. "So he's not dead. I got it." Bruce glanced at Han Xiao and did not intend to pursue the matter further. At this time, the ethereal Pope interrupted and asked slowly, "Black Star, what you said just now is that there's no limit to the number of Sanctum revivals. Is that true or false? What do you think?" Han Xiao asked. "I think this is just an excuse you use to stabilize the revivers." The ethereal Pope spread out his hands. "But nothing is absolute in this world. Maybe this is the truth." The other two also stared at Han Xiao curiously. Hearing this, Han Xiao shrugged and said casually, "It's all up to you whether it's true or not. It doesn't matter which version you believe. When a situation develops to that point, you'll naturally know whether it's true or not. Before that, I personally suggest that you treat what I just said as false. Anyone who considers the worst outcome in advance will definitely not make a mistake." Without waiting for anyone to respond, Han Xiao continued, "Your current task right now is to focus on the current situation. Your current urgent job is to put these revivers under house arrest and ensure that they can't come into contact with the truth. Otherwise, if they retreat again, then I won't be able to do anything." "You're right." The three of them looked at each other, suppressed the doubts in their hearts, and nodded at the same time. They were still more inclined to believe that the so-called unlimited sanctum revivals was a lie Han Shao used to fool the revivers. With Black Star's personality, how could he reveal such a trump card so easily? It was most likely a lie. In any case, it was common for Black Star to lie through his teeth, and they were already used to it. They did not panic at all and even wanted to laugh. Chapter 1371. Click. Han Shao deactivated the remote projection, and his vision returned to his main body. He shook his head and chuckled. He had just spoken to the leaders of the three universal civilizations. From their performance, it seemed like they did not believe him and were more inclined to believe that the sanctum revival was only limited to one time. However, at this point, Han Shao did not care if the three universal civilizations believed him or not. The reason why he had once shouted that the sanctum revival was only limited to one time was to make it easier to control the revivers of the Holy Covenant, reduce their ambitions, and reduce the possibility of the Holy Covenant being exposed. Secondly, to deal with the three universal civilizations who were targeting the Beyond grade, as he had hidden a trump card so that the three universal civilizations would feel that they could still control their lives. Thirdly, to stall for time and wait for Oathkeeper to gather a new set of sanctum keys. Now, both sides were in the same boat. The World Tree civilization was the main conflict, and the three universal civilizations could not do without his help. In the current situation, no matter how wary the three universal civilizations were of the Beyond grade, as they had to rely on their combat strength. Han Shao did not mind showing his cards at all, but unfortunately, they did not believe him for the time being. A monopolistic business is indeed useful. Han Shao chuckled, put away the communicator, and returned to the cabin. He was prepared to use his traditional skills to build a relationship with these new revivers. Swoosh! The alloy cabin door slid open automatically. Han Shao walked in a hall and looked around. The Beyond grade, as in the room, had spontaneously formed a few small groups. The direct descendants of the various families sat together, and the neutral Beyond grade, as sat together according to the era. Occasionally, there would be some lone wolves sitting alone in the corner. Those who wanted to inquire about information and liked to make friends were wandering between the various groups. Everyone was at the same level and had a lot of common topics. The atmosphere was quite lively. As soon as Han Shao entered, he realized that the revivers of the various groups were looking at him with curiosity and surprise in their eyes. This time, Nilfgaardi took the initiative to walk over. He sized up Han Shao and went straight to the point. "So you're the strongest mechanic of this generation. When I recover, let's have a chat." Han Shao raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Okay, you're always welcome." He roughly knew why these revivers were looking at him like that. It was most likely that when he was talking to the leaders of the three universal civilizations, these revivers had heard about his life from the other Beyond grade, and were surprised by his achievements. In his opinion, Nilfgaardi's suggestion to spar was definitely not just for the sake of exchanging pointers. It was most likely because he wanted to regain the position of the main god of the machinery faith. Han Shao knew a little about Nilfgaardi's thoughts. If he was dead, then there was nothing wrong with leaving his inheritance to his descendants. But now that he was dead, he planned to snatch back his inheritance. He did not want others to continue to occupy the foundation he had built. After all, it was theirs to begin with. Looking around, Han Shao estimated that there was more than one person who had such a mentality. Reviving a group of senior Beyond grade, as he had long expected that there would be such a conflict of interest with the current Beyond grade, as, I'm now the old Manison, the one being challenged." Han Shaoxin smiled. Aegon Vardnads would not let him show his full strength, so Nilfgaardi still had the confidence to spar. However, he was currently a blank slate without any equipment, so now was not the time to spar. Nilfgaardi nodded and exchanged a few pleasantries before walking to the side and sitting back among the primordial ones. This time, someone from the neutral Beyond Grade A group spoke to Han Xiao. By the way, you said that you're the current leader of the Beyond Grade A Association. Is your association still recruiting? Han Xiao looked in the direction of the voice and nodded with a smile at the speaker. Of course. Our association will always welcome newcomers to join. If you don't want to fight alone, joining the association is the best choice. This is the interest union of the current Beyond Grade As. We've always been happy to help newcomers form their own forces, but this is a time of war, so we won't be doing this for the time being. As he spoke, Han Xiao turned to look at Hilbert and the others and smiled. Also, we welcome all the former direct descendants who are unwilling to serve the three universal civilizations. If you feel uncomfortable staying with the three universal civilizations, the association is also a choice. Hey, Ulla shouted unhappily. Poaching our people in front of us. Aren't you being too arrogant? This feeling was like an honest man seeing his girlfriend being asked for WeChat by a strong scumbag passing by. Don't joke around like this. Claudi's face was expressionless, and his aura was cold. As a national pillar, he could not do nothing about Han Xiao trying to poach him. Reeve, who was at the side, stared at Claudi and exclaimed in surprise, "Little Kiki, you've been carrying the burden all these years. You've developed a good aura." Claudi's serious and tense expression immediately collapsed. He was not used to putting on airs in front of these seniors. Not far away, Kasui's ears twitched, and he almost thought that someone was calling him. He immediately recalled some bad memories and glared at Han Zhao's back with resentment. Hilbert did not respond directly. He shook his head and said, "Thank you for your invitation, but let's talk about it in the future." He just did not want to continue working hard, but it did not mean that he did not want the retirement benefits of the three universal civilizations. After all, he had exchanged his life for credit. Han Xiao smiled and did not mind. He walked around the various groups and briefly communicated with them. It could be considered as getting to know each other better. After chatting for a while, the spaceship finally arrived at the location of the multi-dimensional sky opening transportation device. It entered the circular area and activated the device. With a flash of light, it was quickly teleported to the main base of the interceptor circle. The three universal civilizations had already made preparations to welcome the revivers to their temporary residences. In order to prevent any accidents, most of the Beyond Grade as accompanied them. Han Xiao did not follow them. Instead, he went to the underworld with Hela. On the way to their temporary lodgings, everyone chatted casually. At the back of the team, Manison and Nilfgaardi walked side by side, remaining silent. After a while, Nilfgaardi slowly spoke. "You're the leader of this generation of the mechanical race." "Yes," Manison replied calmly. "Not bad. I didn't expect such a powerful person like you to appear among my descendants." Nilfgaardi nodded in satisfaction. Manison looked straight ahead, turned a deaf ear, and did not answer. Not only was Nilfgaardi the first divine throne mechanic in history, the founder of the machinery faith, but he was also the ancestor of the mechanical race. Manison was not interested in acknowledging an ancestor. His interaction with Nilfgaardi was limited. Before he became a Beyond Grade A, Nilfgaardi had already died. Furthermore, after advancing to the Beyond Grade A realm, his race had sublimated and become a new species. In terms of genes, the two were no longer the same creature. After lamenting for a while, Nilfgaardi patted Manison's Lord's avatar on the shoulder and asked, "How's the mechanical race now?" "You'll know when we get back. It's not bad anyway." Manison could not be bothered to report to him. "That's good." Nilfgaardi nodded and said, "I'll have to trouble you to announce my return to the entire mechanical race in a while. Tell them that the ancestor is back." With that, Nilfgaardi quickened his pace and left Manison's side. Manison looked at his back and raised his hand to pat the shoulder that Nilfgaardi had patted as if he was sweeping away dust. "If this was in the past, I would have definitely thought of a way to kill you." Manison snorted coldly in his heart. Although Nilfgaardi did not express any intention of taking back the leader of the mechanical race, with one more ancestor, his power would definitely be reduced. The mechanical race was his important base camp. He did not want to see anyone interfere with his interests, not even his ancestor. You want to take away the ready-made cake just because you're older and more senior? Dream on. You want to step on my head? Do you think you're Black Star? However, Manison had restrained himself a lot. Although he was not willing to give up his interests, he did not plan to do anything to Nilfgaard. At most, he would send him to create a new mechanical race. Anyway, the old mechanical race had already been reproduced for so many years, and it was already in his bag. Just the name of his ancestor alone would not be able to easily shake his foundation as a leader. On the other side, Milizaus was also with the ancestor of the astral spiritual dragon race, but the atmosphere was completely different. It was very warm. Old man, is what you said true? Do you really have a way to compress my size while maintaining all my combat strength? Milizaus was shocked. This is my unique secret technique that can only be used by those with my bloodline. However, after you became a beyond grade A, you diluted my bloodline and sublimated it into a new species. This won't do. Later, I'll put in a few hundred tons of dragon blood. Take it back and use magic to smelt it and fuse it into your body to increase the density of your bloodline. The next time you come over, let me examine you properly. I'll help you adjust this secret technique and tailor it for you. A small blue dragon that was less than a dozen meters long was lying on Milizaus' huge body. Its body was graceful, and its crystal-like blue dragon scales shone brightly. Its golden dragon horn was like jade and shaped like a crown. There were thick whiskers on both sides of the dragon's head. Dragon mage Marspel Dimitrite was originally a blue dragon with a mutated bloodline. After advancing to the beyond grade A realm, his genes had been sublimated, and he had an amazing talent for magic. He had created countless dragon language spells, and the astral spiritual dragon race was only one of the bloodlines he left behind. Many of the dragon language spells that Milizaus was currently using were all Marspel's legacies. Putting aside his actual combat strength, at least in terms of magic research, Milizaus was inferior. The way mages and mechanics consumed resources was different. Milizaus did not care much about who ruled his race. As soon as he saw his knowledgeable ancestor, he approached to share his experience. It just so happened that both dragons had straightforward personalities, so the conversation was quite pleasant. Marspel did not hide anything and said that he could solve the problem of Milizaus' size, which was the most troublesome problem. In fact, there were many spells that could reduce one's size, but different races had different body structures, so the magic models required were also different. This was the applicability of magic theory. Milizaus had a special beyond grade A dragon body, and although there were some rare shrinking spells that were suitable for him, it would reduce his combat power to a certain extent. Thus, he would only be at his peak when he released his entire body. However, the secret technique that Marspel mentioned did not have such a negative effect. Instead, it could increase one's body density, strengthen one's defense, and increase one's combat strength. It was a dragon language spell that could only be used under certain conditions. Milizaus was pleasantly surprised and pestered Marsipo to ask more questions. Marsipo was very generous and said that as long as Milizaus wanted to learn, he would teach Milizaus. After all, he was Milizaus' ancestor, and the scene was filled with benevolence. Once he learned this secret technique, he would no longer be a target, and his combat strength would increase greatly. Thinking of this future, Milizaus' heart burned with passion. He could finally escape the fate of being a meat shield. Such a promising career should be left to Black Star. It was worth it to recognize this ancestor. Underworld dimension. Han Shao and Hela teleported over to check on Aegon Vardnad's situation. Aegon Vardnad's had already transformed into a hero spirit. He was shocked and furious, and he was surrounded by the 8 brothers of the underworld. Upon seeing Han Shao descend, Aegon Vardnad's eyes bulged out as he said angrily, "You actually killed me. You, shut up. If it weren't for me, you would still be a dead man. You wouldn't even have the right to be killed. You went too far. This is your punishment." Han Shao interrupted him expressionlessly. Hela turned to look at the 8 brothers of the underworld and asked, "Have you helped him figure out his situation?" "I've already told him about the situation in the underworld, but he doesn't seem to have accepted reality." Sorokin shrugged. Hearing this, Aegon Vardnads suddenly turned his head and glared at Hela. "Don't even think of making me your slave. I will never be controlled by you." "Oh." Hela's expression was cold and indifferent. Han Xiao crossed his arms and said casually, "A bad life is better than a good death. You have to think carefully. Although you are controlled by others, in a sense, this is an immortal body. I would rather die than be free." Aegon Vardnads held his head high and puffed out his chest. Han Xiao clapped twice and turned to look at Hela. "Lock him up alone. Release him when you change your mind." "Okay, I can adjust the hero spirit's sense of time and make him feel like a year." Without hesitation, Hela used her authority in the underworld and locked Aegon Vardnads up before he could say anything. Seeing this, the 8 brothers of the underworld clicked their tongues in sympathy. All the senses of the hero spirits were controlled by the underworld controller, and they could simulate all kinds of experiences. Offending a dog with authority would definitely not end well. From now on, there will be 9 hero spirit kings in the underworld. They're all peaked beyond grade, as only slightly weaker than Sorokin. We've gained another general. Han Xiao nodded. He did not doubt that Aegon Vardnads would admit defeat in the end, because he had no other choice. If this guy was really so unyielding, he would not have begged for mercy when he was beaten up. If Aegon Vardnads was obedient, he would at most be under house arrest for a period of time. However, since he was so courting death, Han Xiao did not have any psychological burden in locking him up in the underworld. He had to bear the corresponding price for doing something. You chose yourself, hero. On the other side, Sorokin was in a good mood. Finally, there was a newcomer. This way, he would not be the youngest, happy. At the same time, in the World Tree territory, numerous roots stretched out from the space, continuously producing troops, sending out batch after batch of freshly baked fleets, turning from illusion to reality. Heart Tree King sat on his throne and looked at this scene from afar. He casually asked, "How's the situation now?" Other than some high-level combatants who are still in the process of reviving, the battleships and soldiers lost in the previous battle have basically been replenished by the Mother Tree. We have regrouped some troops over the past few days, and 230 billion battleships have already been sent to the secondary dimensions. We are currently searching for the territory of the other civilization in the secondary dimensions. The executive officer reported the current situation. Okay. Heart Tree King nodded calmly. The attack path of the main universe was blocked, and the World Tree began to make preparations. It planned to start from the secondary dimensions and invade through another route. However, the World Tree did not give up on its plan to attack the interception circle. It had been gathering a larger number of troops, and, at the same time, it had the advance army consume the 3 universal civilizations' troops and push the jump point forward. The other party is in a stalemate with our over-the-horizon encampment. Their expansion has been blocked and is almost at a standstill. This plan is very effective. I estimate that before we launch our next attack, the jump point will be maintained in this area and will not be pushed away by the other party, another World Tree executive officer said. Not bad. The Heart Tree King praised and suddenly paused before asking, "Yes. Have you found out the reason for the information leak? How did they know about our strategic deployment?" "Yes, there's already some clues. It's suspected to be related to those with the ability to foresee." An executive officer took out a report and explained. According to the data, 93.4% of the exposed tactical deployments have one thing in common. All of them were foreseen by the future state. We have reason to suspect that the strategic deployment was leaked to the other party because of this. As for what method the other party used, we do not know for the time being. Currently, all foresight operations have been stopped. We are thoroughly investigating the details of the abilities, awakenings, and backgrounds of all the future state perceivers to find a reason. Many tactical deployments have been discovered by the 3 universal civilizations, so it was impossible for the World Tree, to remain indifferent. Although they did not know the abilities of Destiny's Child, through data analysis, the World Tree civilization still found a reason for the information leak. Even if they could not solve the root cause, they could at least solve the symptoms. Heart Tree King patted the armrest and slowly said, "It's good that we found the solution. However, don't seal off the other party's intelligence channel. When needed, this channel can come in handy. It might catch them off guard." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.